Chapter 921. Meaning, Fang Hao should have sought help from the Trade Alliance garrison instead of exchanging fire with the opponents inside. Both sides fought fiercely, directly demolishing the building. Headquarters and Garrison 032 aren't the same. You can't simply determine right from wrong. Fang Hao thought about it. The Dragon clan had suffered greater losses than he had, and indeed, he did demolish their property. He admitted as much. All right, I admit it, Fang Hao said. Fang Hao took out the corresponding warfire coins from his space and handed them to the goblin in front of him. That meant the dispute with the Trade Alliance was over. How have the Dragon clan been doing recently? Fang Hao continued to ask. Cricketer, frowning, said, I heard they're still investigating your case, but it seems there hasn't been much progress. A smile appeared on Fang Hao's face. It seemed the Dragon clan wasn't very capable after all. Such a small matter, and they couldn't even find out anything. He didn't ask further about the matter and continued, I want to open a store in headquarters, are there any procedures I need to go through? Cough. Cricketer coughed dryly. His eyes somewhat surprised, open a store in headquarters? Are you still talking about that cosmetics thing? No, selling weapons and equipment and such. Fang Hao felt opening a store at the headquarters was indeed a good idea. It would serve an excellent promotional purpose, allowing other major powers to order equipment and items from him. Definitely profitable. Are you sure? Of course, Fang Hao nodded. Getting a shop in headquarters isn't so easy to apply for, Cricketer explained. Oh, are there any special requirements? Asked Fang Hao. Not that, but there are a limited number of shops, and some powers have been applying for decades and are still waiting in line without any opportunity to open a shop. Well, decades spent waiting in line. This had become a matter of lifespan and the depth of a power's heritage. In line, after line, it was possible for a power to be wiped out. Is there any way around it? Fang Hao asked, a hint of mystery in his voice. None, and right now the Trade Alliance has some opinions about both you and the Dragon clan. Applying now, even the line isn't the problem, there's a likelihood of getting flatly rejected, Cricketer replied. Fang Hao nodded, signaling his understanding. It looked like this matter would have to wait for later consideration. Now wasn't a good time. Cricketer had lunch here and, taking the gifts Fang Hao gave him, left satisfied. No matter where you were, interpersonal relationships were quite important. The night was thick and silent. Lyss City, City Lord's mansion. On a spacious soft bed, a man and a woman lay on their backs, looking up at the canopy ceiling, entering a time of reflection. It was quiet for a long time. Only then did Rebecca sigh and say, before, I thought I'd just live out my life like this, guarding Lyss City, and eventually becoming an old woman buried in the cemetery in the city, but I never expected that in the blink of an eye, I'd be fooled into bed by a kid like you. Next to her, Fang Hao pinched and corrected, what do you mean fooled? This is love, haven't you heard a song? What song? Love is like a tornado. Rebecca gave him a light smack, what kind of song is that? What's the next line? Forgot, seems like it's something about it coming too fast. Rebecca pulled the blanket over them, still looking upward, I never believed in love, it's all made up by those wandering poets, otherwise the noble circles wouldn't be so messed up. Seems like she did have a point, Fang Hao had also heard that noble circles were chaotic. The customs here seemed to be even more liberal. Ladies in private would even discuss some intimate topics, not more conservative than men's. You're right, but I believe we were mutually attracted and it gradually developed into love, Fang Hao continued. You're just lecherous, look at how many women you have around you. Hearing this, Fang Hao turned on his side, propped himself on his elbow, and looked at the cheek so close to him. What are you talking about? I admit you have some beauty, but what made me fall for you was Big Sister's talent and character. Rebecca also turned to lie on her side, pinching his cheek. Back then, you sashayed and wiggled your butt when you walked, and you dare say you weren't deliberately getting close to me. Back then, the fiefdom was indeed selling dresses, and Big Sister was naturally beautiful, so of course, I had to find a way to get close to you, but it was strictly for selling clothes. Rebecca's cheeks turned red, and then she said, back then, you took my measurements for the dress and saw my body. After that, you always came at night to discuss matters. Can you dare say you didn't have any thoughts? Fang Hao opened his mouth, wanting to offer an excuse, but it seemed inappropriate to claim he wasn't moved by her body considering the flirtatious atmosphere. They had already progressed to this point. Some cheesy lines didn't seem too bad. Of course, I was moved. I wished I could have had you right then and there. Rebecca's cheeks turned an even deeper shade of red, which Fang Hao could still see despite the nightstones being covered, giving her skin a rosy glow. Her delicate fingers carefully pulled the thin blanket down a little, revealing a large expanse of snow-white flesh, full of a heavy sense of weight. Actually, I am well aware of your predilections. Predilections? Those ladies of high society have talked about these things in private. Those old nobles all like young women with slender waists. But men like you, not that big, have a preference for older, more mature women. Feeling a sense of conquest, Rebecca said with an air of knowing it all. Well, she did have a point. What kind of nonsense is that? Fang Hao's arm wrapped around her back, drawing her closer into his embrace, making the heavy mass press and deform against his chest. Rebecca's face reddened even more, feeling his provocation. Wait a moment. Fang Hao was startled. What was there to wait for? What's wrong? Rebecca continued, I want to ask, what about Rolina? Fang Hao was actually aware of the relationship between Rolina and Rebecca. From the sequence of events, he had actually joined later. It was somewhat unfair to Rolina. What about Rolina? Did she find out? As Rolina's loyalty increased, her temper wasn't as volatile as before. Although she could still get angry, it seemed more like she was tsundere. Fang Hao had arranged some tasks, and she would curse while going about completing them. At the moment, Rolina was still in the war, following the army attacking Odysseus' forces. No, you know about my thing with Rolina, right? Rebecca whispered into his ear. A wave of fragrance wafted over, and Fang Hao couldn't help but push forward again. I know. After thinking it over, Rebecca continued, I don't want to lose you, nor do I want to lose her. What do you mean? Fang Hao was somewhat confused. Seeing that he didn't understand, Rebecca was more straightforward. Rolina is actually a very nice girl. Just that she's had a hard life, was deceived, then dismembered, leaving deep mental scars. So, do you like her? If you do, I don't mind. Wow. Fang Hao finally understood what she meant. Clearing his throat, would she be willing? Let's see, and you say you're not lecherous. You've had your eye on Rolina for a while now, haven't you? Rebecca immediately exclaimed. Fang Hao quickly silenced her mouth, don't shout. After a while, when he let go, Rebecca continued, I will speak well of you, and whether it works out is up to you. I don't want to be too worried about being in the middle of it all. Alright, let's get this straight, I'm agreeing because of you, not because I'm a pervert. Rolina was absolutely beautiful in terms of looks, figure, and presence. If Rebecca represented mature and dignified womanhood with her fullness and poise, then Rolina embodied pure beauty. Long, straight legs, a well-proportioned waist, and delicate facial features made up the Rolina of now. It wasn't just Fang Hao, women liked her too. That's why Rebecca, who had rejected countless Federation nobles, ended up choosing to be with Rolina. Rebecca's beautiful eyes twinkled as she blinked, giving off an expression that seemed to say, I knew you were that kind of person. Seeing that this woman was getting excited, no longer the one begging for mercy a moment ago, he charged at her once more. The next day, early in the morning, Li Rong sent a message. The Federal Conference had issued a new order. The Federation army began to pull back its forces, properly engaging the retreating undead army to keep them occupied. This not only fulfilled the treaty signed with the Blood Clan but also allowed the Undead and Blood Clan armies to slaughter each other. Chapter 922. Fang Hao was not surprised by the Federation's cautious tactics. He even felt relieved, knowing how to disguise their intentions and intentionally delaying, so as not to exacerbate the grief of their allies at critical moments. From this perspective, Doherty still cared somewhat about maintaining appearances. You needn't worry about the military matters, but personally, you should look out for your safety during this time. Odysseus might well assassinate human leaders to prevent any potential pursuit. With Odysseus withdrawing troops from the south, Fang Hao wasn't too worried. The distance between them was vast. Additionally, considering the depletion of their forces in previous battles with the Federation, it was evident they couldn't stand up to Amanda's forces. It was even possible that before the army could return to the capital, Amanda would have already reached its gates and succeeded in her restoration. However, it was Li Rong who seemed to be in greater danger to him. A two-front assault would undoubtedly enrage Odis. If he were Odis, to avoid Federation forces exploiting his withdrawal or attacking the Great Cemetery from the south, he would spare no expense in assassinating the Federation's command structure, to throw the enemy into chaos and create opportunities for himself. Oh, now that you mention it, I'm a bit worried too. I have to sleep with Morse, Li Rong responded. After thinking, Fang Hao said, just be careful. With your status, they probably won't bother trying to kill you. Your sister. Ending the chat, Fang Hao sent the message to Dong Jiayu. He wanted her to relay it to Amanda so she would be forewarned. Afternoon. Fang Hao, accompanied by Dimitrija, used the teleportation array to travel to the Trade Alliance headquarters. Compared to their previous covert behavior, the two were much more overt now. But due to the busy and hurried flow of people around, no one paid attention to them. Lizardman shop. In a room dominated by peacock blue tones, an attendant served them fruit wine and pastries, then left the room. Queen Anastasia sat across from them, her gaze sweeping back and forth over the pair. After a silent wait, Fang Hao broke the silence. The Queen seems to be doing well recently, he said. Queen Anastasia returned her gaze to Fang Hao and said, not very well. Oh? Troubles perhaps? Fang Hao asked as he sipped the lizardman's fruit wine. The flavor was strong, with the tartness of fruit, similar to that of a concentrated juice. Queen Anastasia continued, do you go by Fang Hao or Fule? What's the difference? It's just a name, Fang Hao replied. Ha, the Queen glared at him. Even as a lizardman covered in scales, she managed to convey a sense of allure. The Dragon Clan came to my city a few days ago, claiming you were one of our Holy Dynasty's people and demanded that I hand you over, the Queen said with some dissatisfaction in her tone. Oh? That's an issue. The Dragon Clan is really troubling, Fang Hao coughed lightly, given the Holy Dynasty's dignity, we absolutely shouldn't tolerate this. Would you like to join my dragon-slaying alliance? The Queen's eyes widened. You have an alliance? How many powers? Including you, too. Please don't count us in, the Queen immediately waved her hands, unwilling to wade into these troubled waters. Fang Hao smiled and did not continue that topic. The lizardmen, being amphibious troops, couldn't match the Dragon Clan and he didn't count on them. Fang Hao continued, this time, I wanted to discuss trade matters with the Queen. Oh? Trade, the Queen grew more curious. Fang Hao was bold, and his mind was filled with strange ideas. Every time she saw him, he always surprised her. Yes, we are allies, aren't we? Fang Hao asked. The Queen covertly glanced at Dimitrija and cautiously said, sort of. Fearing he might pull her into the dragon-slaying alliance. I'm planning to establish privately, a merchandise convoy that traverses both our territories to facilitate the exchange of goods between them, Fang Hao said. Not about dragon slaying, which relieved the Queen. She retorted, isn't the trade alliance sufficient? And the teleportation array makes it convenient. The trade alliance is indeed useful, but the taxes are calculated per item. The bigger the batch, the higher the platform fees we pay, products intended for common usage become impractical through the platform, sometimes even causing the prices to surge, Fang Hao quickly explained. The Queen frowned slightly. So, are you suggesting we trade privately? Exactly, large batches of weapons and equipment can still go through the trade alliance, but what about smaller items? Say, civilian apparel, fruits, vegetables, specialties from both regions, could be traded privately to reduce costs, Fang Hao proposed. The Queen paused to think before saying, are you sure you can transport goods from your side to ours? The proximity of their territories and the safety of the routes were to be considered. If it were that easy to transport goods, the trade alliance wouldn't have reached its current scale. It's currently a concept. If the Holy Dynasty agrees to this cooperation, we could discuss further and address these obstacles, Fang Hao replied. Offline trade required meeting many conditions. Peace, integrity, and abundance of resources were important factors. As the lizardmen were unified in belief and ruled entirely by the lizardman Queen, a certain level of safety was guaranteed. This was an advantage over the orcs, whose territory was plagued by tribal raids and rampant bandits. Chapter 923. It became quite difficult to guarantee the trade caravan's safety. Moreover, lizardmen reside in dense forests and marshes where the resources are extremely abundant. Trade between both parties would also be beneficial to Fang Hao's side. Of course, these are only preliminary considerations. Whether it can be successful still requires careful contemplation. After some thought, the queen eventually said, "Let's research this matter further in a while." What she considered was still Fang Hao's relationship with the Dragon Clan. If the matters with the Dragon Clan aren't resolved, researching these would be too premature. Fang Hao nodded, "That's fine. This visit was just to briefly share my thoughts." Afterward, both parties casually discussed various matters concerning different races. The atmosphere turned out to be quite good. The queen also invited Dimitrija to the Lizardman's territory to visit the ancient saint temple. Fang Hao let Dimitrija make her own choice. Dimitrija did not decline and set the day after tomorrow to go to the Lizardman's territory. Coming out from the Lizardman's place, Fang Hao and Dimitrija went to the Undead shop. In the Undead shop, the merchandise on the first and second floors hadn't changed much. But the third floor had opened, selling a grand and gorgeously designed stone coffin. It had the effects of nourishing the soul and preserving the undead body. Fang Hao did not purchase it, the price was too exorbitant, and it wasn't necessary for the territory at the moment. Leaving the Undead shop, they then visited the dwarf and elf shops. Although nothing was bought, it gave Fang Hao a new appreciation for the elves' strength. Unlike the elves in text and film, hiding in the forests and shooting arrows, the elves here are a formidable race. Their long lifespan and intelligent minds allowed them to establish a vast empire. It is said that the human society's structure, as well as magic, were learned from the elves. And the equipment sold by the elves was even more comprehensive. Their designs reflected the elves' elegance, and the quality was among the best across the various races. The last visit was to the Blood Clan, the unclean immortals. Upon entering the shop, a strong scent of blood greeted them. The clerk was a woman with a pale complexion but still fairly comely in appearance. Seeing the two enter, "Welcome," she greeted with a smile, her two sharp fangs peeking from her lips. Fang Hao nodded and then proceeded directly into the shop. He began to look around on his own. Skull boring bayonet, blue, price, 220 Warfire coins. Mysterious enlightening razor, blue, price, 280 Warfire coins. Death seal leather armor, blue, price, 250 Warfire coins. Living thorn armor, blue, price, 300 Warfire coins. The Blood Clan's weapons and equipment mainly consisted of daggers, short swords, leather armors, and cloaks, which likely correlated with their combat habits. Continuing to look further, Fang Hao frowned. He realized why the scent of blood was so strong here. Human Tier 5 Warrior Blood price, 280 Warfire coins. Human Tier 7 Mage Blood price, 320 Warfire coins. Elf Tier 7 Mage Blood price, 550 Warfire coins. Troll. They were actually selling blood as well. My word, the more affordable Tier 5 and Tier 6, and even Tier 8 and Tier 9, the available races included almost all but the Dragon Clan and Undead. Blood from trolls and goblins was also for sale. Could that even taste good? Fang Hao glanced at it and turned to walk towards the second floor. The female Blood Clan clerk followed him upstairs. The front part of the second floor was still weapons and equipment. Sinister Flame Resistant Cloak price, 750 Warfire coins, Blood Clan Influence 500. Devourer's Tooth price, 950 Warfire coins, Blood Clan Influence 700. Behind the weapons was still blood. Human Green Hero Blood price, 1200 Warfire coins, Blood Clan Influence 1000. Elf Blue Hero Blood price, 2500 Warfire coins, Blood Clan Influence 2200. Troll Purple Hero Blood price, 8500 Warfire coins, Blood Clan Influence 8000. My goodness! The Blood Clan's food has such high standards. The highest grade, Purple Hero's Blood, was even for sale. What a race of gourmets! Cough cough! Are all these bloods drawn from captives? Fang Hao asked the clerk beside him. He was genuinely curious. We have cooperations, sir, she replied. Fang Hao understood this meant that some heroes actively drew some of their blood to provide to the Blood Clan, with both sides sharing the profit. Thinking about it, it made sense. If the Blood Clan relied on capturing people for blood supply, they would become the public enemy of all people. Every race would unite to attack the Blood Clan. Moving to the end, the third floor had also been opened. Fang Hao and colleagues continued up to the third floor. The space on the third floor was large and heavily adorned in a Gothic style. In the center was an elaborately carved solid wood coffin, behind which was a half-body wooden mannequin draped with a necklace. Beside it stood a weapon rack with a short sword placed on it. Uncrowned Royal Necropolis, dark gold, price, 3,780,000 Warfire coins, influence 50,000. My god! This is sky-high awesomeness. A dark gold level necropolis. Lying in it would practically gild your body. This blood clan really differs from the undead. The coffins of the blood clan were mostly made of wood, with the wood's quality determining their status. While the undeads were made of stone, generally just ordinary stone, with the level of the stone coffin's runes determining their quality. Looking further back. Roll a talisman, orange, price, 7,530,000 Warfire coins, blood clan influence 20,000. Damn it! This couldn't just be a coincidence, could it? Thinking to himself, Fang Hao immediately checked the properties. Roll a talisman, orange. Category, talisman. Function, protection, return home. Chapter 924. Protection, the wearer is unaffected by any negative states against oneself. Return, an internal teleportation array that allows the bearer to teleport back to Eternal Night City. Description, Isabella Ann Tobias, a talisman made for her youngest daughter. Wow, what a discovery! Rolana's full name is Rolana Ann Tobias. She must be the daughter of Isabella Ann Tobias. Thinking about it, it really seems like fate is playing tricks on people. If Rolana had worn this necklace at that time, even if it was the Red Duke who wanted to harm her, she could have escaped back using the return ability. Unfortunately, there are no what-ifs. Rolana ran away from home and didn't bring the talisman with her, which led her to suffer so much. Fang Hao looked at the abilities of the talisman again. Aside from teleportation return, the first ability is called protection. It's similar to the ability of his own light feather short sword. The only difference being that the wearer is unaffected by any negative states against oneself. This against oneself, if understood on a deeper level. Are sunlight and holy light also considered negative influences for the blood clan? If so, a blood clan member wearing this pendant talisman would be monstrous. They would become a blood clan without any weaknesses. The last weapon, called regicide, also an orange short sword, held no interest for Fang Hao. And the price was also very high. Fang Hao thought about it but still did not move to go downstairs. He looked at the clerk waiting respectfully beside him and spoke, "If I say I want to buy something here, but I don't have enough influence, can it be resolved?" Having encountered a similar situation with the Sea tribe, he was still determined to ask. The clerk did not show any sign of change. The items sold by the blood clan were targeted at the undead, more or less. Their customers were mostly blood clan from various places. For people from other factions, even if they were interested, often they didn't have enough influence. After sizing up Fang Hao, the clerk spoke, "Does the guest intend to buy in bulk or just a single item in the shop? Is there a chance? What's the difference? For bulk goods using orders, you need influence. If it's a single purchase, you pay here, and you can take the item away directly," the clerk explained softly, standing to the side. Which means, for items sold according to the trade alliance process, one needs to go through the process according to the influence. If taken directly, then the condition of having sufficient influence is not needed. That's not right. The trade alliance wouldn't let such things happen freely. Understanding a bit, yet not quite clear, Fang Hao stated directly, "I want to buy that talisman and take it away with me." The clerk appeared slightly surprised. One couldn't be certain whether the surprise was due to a human buying a blood clan necklace, or because someone so young could have so much money. In any case, the eyes were very wide. "Very well, sir," the clerk packed up the talisman and said, "Sir, please follow me downstairs." At the front desk, the clerk pulled out a black invitation card from the trade alliance from under the counter. He began to proceed according to the process. Fang Hao now understood. The blood clan indeed would not proceed so honestly according to process. They had already prepared an invitation card in advance, to provide convenience for customers who do not have a card but still wish to purchase. Of course, for those needing to buy a large quantity of items. If the information on the card doesn't match with your territory, the transaction still can't go through. After some operations, the clerk put the card away again. He smiled and said, 7,530,000 warfire coins, sir. Fang Hao nodded, directly took out the corresponding amount in warfire cards, and handed them over to the clerk. After paying, the gift box containing the talisman was handed over to Fang Hao. May I know which great person owns this shop? Fang Hao asked tentatively. The clerk smiled, Eternal Night City. Chapter 925. Eternal Night City. Before this, Fang Hao had never even heard of this city. But through the Rolina talisman and its description, he knew this was where Rolina's mother lived. It must also be an important power core city for the Blood Clan. If you need anything, you can always come here to shop or make a reservation, sir. The clerk bowed slightly and continued. For this young and wealthy customer, the clerk still showed enough enthusiasm. I will, Fang Hao nodded with a smile. After leaving the shop, he breathed in the air outside the window. The blood in the Blood Clan's shops was too rich. It made it somewhat hard to breathe. There were still gains to be had today. He had obtained one of Rolina's pieces of equipment and learned more about her. Rolina's mother was named Isabella and lived in Eternal Night City. When the war ended, he could hand over the talisman to Rolina. It was unclear what the relationship between Rolina and her mother was like, whether it could increase that last bit of loyalty. Fang Hao, accompanied by Dimitrija, continued to wander aimlessly through the streets. He was still somewhat disbelieving that so many shops in the headquarters could all sell out. But after exploring every district, it turned out there were indeed none left vacant. Moreover, it was unknown where this headquarters was built, as the city's area was limited. So, the chances of shop expansion in the future weren't great. It seemed he could only strive to the utmost, waiting for a power to decline before getting the opportunity to buy. After strolling around a large area, as he was leaving, his gaze was drawn to a tavern nearby. Succubus Tavern. Alluring and gorgeous succubi, wearing tight revealing clothes, with their smooth heart-shaped tails swaying non-stop. In front of the tavern, a succubus was standing on a wooden platform erected there. With a blush on her small face, talking about something to the crowd below. The White Temptress demon, recognized by the Trade Alliance. Unexpectedly, there was even his own business enterprise here, and he wondered if the tavern was legitimate. Approaching closer with Dimitrija, they too heard what the succubus was saying. In 5 days, the Succubus Tavern will host a drinking contest. Except for the Undead Clan, all races can participate, and the winner will receive a prize of 20,000 warfire coins, the succubus announced in a crisp and pleasant voice. Why can't the undead participate? Someone in the crowd asked. Standing on her tiptoes, the succubus spotted the skeleton who asked the question, and said petulantly, "We're testing alcohol tolerance. If you drink it and it pours out, how do you count that?" "Haha, exactly, when it spills everywhere, we'll have to clean up. This is about drinking, not bathing." The other races below all chimed in agreeably. The skeleton, wanting to say something but seeing the unanimous opinion of those around him, could only shut his mouth. After mocking the skeleton for a while, someone else asked, "How do we participate?" "You can register inside the tavern, each person pays a 100 warfire coin registration fee, and then you can join the contest," the succubus explained. "Hey! 100 warfire coins, not too much," people below analyzed the price. In this world, there were still many who loved and could drink a lot. Especially races like dwarves, trolls, and orcs, for whom drinking was a common affair. With 100 warfire coins, not only could one drink one's fill. If one won, there would also be a prize of 20,000. Wasn't this an incredibly good deal? "Excuse me, I want to sign up. I'm joining too, it's just drinking, I've never been afraid of anyone." "With your height, how much can you drink?" "Height has nothing to do with alcohol tolerance." Immediately, many people entered the tavern to sign up for the contest taking place in 5 days. Fang Hao watched from a distance. He wasn't interested in a drinking contest, and there were genuinely too many people in the tavern. After watching for a while, he turned and left, heading back to his domain. Elsewhere, the border of the dreamy forest. The air was filled with a heavy stench of blood. On the newly cleared land, broken spears and swords lay among the mud and bodies, flashing faintly in the twilight. Both fairies and orcs had withdrawn their troops, leaving only a few soldiers on the battlefield to collect the corpses of their fallen comrades. Only at this moment did fairies and orcs move back and forth, silently identifying their own. Deathly silence, peace. In a camp behind the dreamy forest. The leader of the fairy clan, Shinasara, still in the form of an oak tree woman, sat at the head. Below her were numerous fairy generals. After a brief silence, Shinasara asked, "How did it go today?" The fairy hero, Shirel, spoke up, "In today's battle with the orcs, we had over 5,000 wounded and nearly 2,000 dead, with approximately 2,000 enemies killed. In a sheer contest of battlefield strength, the fairy clan might not be a match for the orcs. Their expertise differed, and the dreamy forest was merely a small power occupying a section of the woods. The population was quite limited." After a slight pause, Shirel continued, "If the battle continues this way, our numbers will surely dwindle. Leader, it will be difficult to hold onto this land." Shinasara didn't answer immediately but fell into silent contemplation. The fairies and the furious Lion City orcs had a grudge spanning over a decade. Fighting back and forth. Chapter 926. But in recent years, the fairy clan had been focusing solely on development, while the orcs engaged in relentless conquest, rapidly evolving through their selection. Their strength had gradually surpassed that of the fairy clan. Previously, the fairy clan had secured the dreamy forest, making it difficult for the orcs to break through. But now, wanting to cultivate land at the border had given the orcs an opportunity. Several days of continuous attacks had inflicted heavy losses on the fairies. If this continued, the already scarce population of the fairy clan might be entirely depleted. After much contemplation, Shinasara finally spoke again. "You continue to watch out for the orc movements, and wait for my final message." "Yes, Chief," nodded a group of generals. After Shinasara walked out of the room, she closed her eyes. Her body gradually turned into an oak tree, taking root and dispersing leaves. Night fell. Fang Hao was dealing with the messages from Dong Jiayu and Li Rong. He planned to take a bath in the hot springs to rest. He had just gotten halfway through undressing when Dijin's voice came from outside the door, telling him that the fairy clan's chief Shinasara was requesting to pass through the teleportation array. Fang Hao, who was already halfway out of his pants, frowned. Since the two sides had reached a farming agreement, there had seemed to be no further contact. Coming to his place in the middle of the night, even if you are a tree person, but also a female figure, it seemed somewhat inappropriate. He pulled his pants back on and addressed Dijin through the door, "Take her to the sitting room." "Yes, my lord." Inside the sitting room. Soon, Dijin walked in with Shinasara. "Lord Fang Hao," Shinasara said respectfully. This attitude made Fang Hao even more certain that she had come for a reason. Fang Hao also smiled, "Chief Shinasara, please have a seat." She sat down and without any small talk, Shinasara directly said, "Regarding the grain contract we signed with you before, some special circumstances have arisen." "Oh? Are you facing any difficulties?" Fang Hao asked curiously. Next, Shinasara recounted the battles between the dreamy forest and the orcs to Fang Hao. The content was simple, summarizing the situation as, after such a long time, the land that had been cleared. The grain hadn't even been planted yet. The lack of progress also made Fang Hao's expression turn unpleasant. When the two sides cooperated initially, the fairy clan did not describe it this way. "Since grain represents life, now that you say it might not be possible to plant it, Fang Hao couldn't accept it. Is the fairy clan always this inadequate in handling matters?" Shinasara had no answer. Taking a deep breath, Fang Hao continued, "So, with this visit, Chief Shinasara, do you intend to dissolve our agreement?" It hadn't been long, and dissolving the agreement would still give Fang Hao time to find another way to grow crops. After much thought, Shinasara stood up and bowed slightly. She began, "This visit is to ask for Lord Fang Hao's help for the fairy clan. The fairy clan will not forget this kindness." Fang Hao frowned, touching his chin, "Are you asking me to fight the orcs for you?" Shinasara nodded, "If it's possible." "What would I gain? Besides the friendship of the fairy clan?" "Grain planting, free for the next 10 years. Clearly, Shinasara had thought through her countermeasures before coming. Fang Hao pondered for a moment while frowning. He then said, "I have a better suggestion that you might consider." "Oh? What is your suggestion?" "The reason why the dreamy forest has ended up in its current situation is the lack of a strong backing. Even if I help you repel the orcs this time, what about the second or the third time? The orcs' breeding pace could definitely wear down the fairy clan, Fang Hao analyzed the dilemma of the fairy clan without offering a direct suggestion. The fairy clan once had an influential power. This could be seen from their status at Station 032. But the fairy clan clearly lacked planning skills, or perhaps Shinasura as a leader was not good at planning. As a result, the fairy clan had been living off their past reserves, gradually weakening. Shinasura, when a mass of transmigrators appeared, realized the errors in her thinking. Developing in isolation without interacting with the outside world clearly became their hindrance. So, Lord Fang Hao, what do you suggest? Shinasura continued. Fang Hao flashed a smile. Dreamy Forest needs a powerful backer, like me. You want to swallow us up? Shinasura expressed surprise. I don't mean to hide it from you, Shinasura leader, but the Blood Mountains, Cold Wind Mountains, Eight Peaks Mountain, Crescent Heights and even human cities, and the Orcs' Tasco City, all are parts of my territory. Fang Hao sipped his tea and continued, Dreamy Forest and Tasco City are so close to each other. Once I consider expanding my territory, what will happen to Dreamy Forest? Make way? Or should we take a detour? Fang Hao spoke rather diplomatically. The Dreamy Forest was sandwiched in the middle of the Orc territory. It was very difficult to say they didn't want to clash with the Orcs. Now Fang Hao wanted to recruit her into his territory, in case one day, strategic needs would truly lead to conflict with the outside world. Who would feel secure having Dreamy Forest at their rear, acting as a mere spectator? Possibly, the first to be attacked would be Dreamy Forest, before expanding further onwards. Shinasura showed a humanized surprise. She only knew that Fang Hao's territory had expanded to human cities and Tasco City. She hadn't expected that lands of trolls, dwarfs and even the Blood Clan had long since become part of Fang Hao's territory. Shinasura didn't respond immediately but closed her eyes, her body beginning to root and sprout. Fang Hao knew this meant her consciousness was returning to the Dreamy Forest to discuss this matter. He wasn't in a hurry and quietly waited on the side. After a short while, Shinasura reopened her eyes. Having gained Dreamy Forest, how would you arrange things? Shinasura looked straight into his eyes, her tone serious. Fang Hao opened the map in the Book of Lords and began, Dreamy Forest will still be governed by you. As far as I can see now, I plan to aid the territory's agriculture. The area previously occupied by ice bat monkeys I can allocate it to you. On the map, the area once occupied by ice bat monkeys was a zone between the two territories. With the ice bat monkeys cleared out, the area had become vacant. Joining the two territories, Fang Hao planned to give the land to the fairies for farming. What about the orc side? How would you arrange that? Shinasura continued to inquire. Indeed, up until now, it was clear the fairy clan was interested. Otherwise, they wouldn't have asked so many questions repeatedly. As the two conversed, the room's door behind them opened, and several women who had been soaking in the hot springs in the courtyard entered, giggling and chatting. Each had tender skin, still dripping with water droplets. Fang Hao glanced at them, then turned back and continued to ask, which tribe of the orcs is in conflict with you? Furious Lion City. In the orcs, any group bearing city in its name, held considerable power. Previously, Tasco City was the ruler of that regional area, and all nearby tribes obeyed the city lord's commands. Hearing Shinasura mention the name Furious Lion City, Angia, who was about to go upstairs, stopped in her tracks. She moved to the side and took a seat next to Fang Hao. The parrot-red general flew from somewhere and landed on Angia's shoulder. Fang Hao ignored this and said, if Dreamy Forest becomes a subsidiary territory, I will have someone talk to Furious Lion City about this. If they are not planning to resolve it peacefully, I will arrange military forces. Having received the reply, Shinasura once again closed her eyes, her body rooting and sprouting. Angia beside him spoke, what's going on with Furious Lion City? Furious Lion City is attacking Dreamy Forest, and the fairy clan is seeking our help. What? You know about Furious Lion City? Fang Hao was curious. Angia fed dry fruits into the parrot's mouth, speaking, I used to come from Furious Lion City, I know a bit about that place. Oh? Then we must handle this matter carefully. No need, I was chased out from there. Having a grudge, let me go when we attack. Well now, old and new grievances both existed. Shortly thereafter, Shinasura opened her eyes again and said, all right, I agree to become your subsidiary force, and I hope you will keep your promises. Fang Hao showed a smile, of course, Dreamy Forest will only get better. Let's go, Let's resolve this tonight. Okay. They called Dimitrija over. Along with the two of them, they followed Shinasura to Dreamy Forest. Chapter 927. On the other side. Santai Castle. The meeting hall was brightly lit and bustling with activity. This time, with the undead's retreat, people could finally let loose a little. A banquet was hosted by the ineffectual city lord, Fulban. He invited the upper echelons who fought against the undead to celebrate this victory. Melodious singing echoed throughout the hall. The generals, who were leading troops just days ago, were now dressed in formal wear, gathering in groups and engaging in lively conversations. It was as if the war had passed. They had returned to their once extravagant lives. The banquet was nearing its end. Fulban, his portly body shifting, made his way onto the stage. The music stopped. Fulban raised his glass and began, "This victory could not have been achieved without the sacrifices and efforts of the armies from various cities, nor without the command and decisions of the Hall of Justice, and the support from both the Church and the Mage Alliance. Let us praise the Council. Humanity endures. Humanity endures." All those below raised their glasses and echoed in unison. In a corner, Li Rong donned a wine-red gown. After uttering "Humanity endures," she curled her lips in disdain. At her side were Mapple, dressed in a deep blue gown, and dark elf hero Morse, clad in tight pants and shirt. Putting down her glass, Li Rong turned to Mapple and remarked, "This fatty can't do anything right, but he sure can talk." Fulban, the city lord, had contributed virtually nothing in this battle. He tried to flee several times, but each time guards arranged by Nidam caught him and brought him back. Eventually, all the guards at the city lord's mansion were replaced with those from the Hall of Justice. That was the only thing that kept this fatty in check. But it was merely house arrest, which served no real purpose. Even Li Rong, who was always looking forward to going home, had little respect for this gluttonous fatty. "This is just what nobles are like, get used to it," Mapple scoffed. It seemed this mage didn't feel any real sense of kinship with nobility. Even though she was a noble herself. "After we get back, the council will definitely hold this fatty accountable. It's outrageous for someone so incompetent to still be a city lord." Li Rong picked up her glass again and drank, her words filled with dissatisfaction. Mapple whispered, "What can you do about it? According to the Federation's policies, each city governs itself. No matter how incompetent or useless he is, he's a hereditary city lord. Besides, this war ended in a victory. Why don't they remove him then? The Hall of Justice can place him under house arrest, but they can't pull him from his position." Li Rong argued discontentedly. Mapple shook her head, "The other city lords wouldn't allow it. Warnings and punishments are all fine, but to directly replace a city lord? The rest would then fear for their own positions. Juggle whatever you want, but if you try to remove them, watch them fight back ferociously." Li Rong was somewhat surprised. No wonder. No wonder this fatty was still enjoying himself on stage, looking not the slightest bit nervous. These guys had already figured out the rules of the circle. They weren't the least bit scared of the council's retribution. Such rules are really corrupt. Sooner or later, they will lead to trouble, Li Rong commented. "Yeah, but what can you do about it?" Li Rong pondered, "It lacks someone with the courage to shatter these rules." "Maybe, but we might not live to see it," Mapple speculated. The two conversed quietly. Not far away, a servant approached. After bowing slightly, he said, "Two mages, the city lord invites you both over." They had just been discussing this fatty. And now he had sent someone to invite them. "All right, lead the way," Mapple responded. The servant nodded and led the trio down a long corridor. Eventually, they stopped in front of a room. He gestured for them to enter. Upon entering the room wasn't crowded. Other than City Lord Fulban, there were 3 church bishops and Saint Suhaid present. Members from the Hall of Justice were not present. Nidam was still at the front lines, commanding the battle. "Mage Mapple, Mage Li Rong, please sit. We were just talking about the alliance," Fulban said with a smile, his cheeks quivering. Mapple too, flashed a smile, greeting everyone present with a nod. The Mage Alliance held some status, but its influence was nowhere near that of the churches. Particularly, with the bishops present, they deserved some respect. Mapple and Li Rong took seats to the side, while Dark Elf Morse stood aside. Given his distinct skin color, everyone was already aware of his identity and didn't pay much attention. Once everyone was seated, Fulbin continued, "This time, our fight against the undead was only successful thanks to all of you. We owe you great thanks." The corpulent man stood and bowed slightly to everyone. Despite their dissatisfaction with the obese man, everyone responded courteously. Fulbin sat down again and turned towards the church and the Mage Alliance, showering them with praises. Especially the church, whose members he lauded extravagantly. He also promised financial support after the war to repair temples across the land. Upon hearing about the funding, the faces of the bishops bloomed like chrysanthemums, radiant with satisfaction. Li Rong saw this. She pursed her lips, thinking to herself, "Good Lord." Seeing the trend, any punishment for this fatty after returning to the council might be even lighter than expected. These nobles really lived by pragmatic rules, focusing keenly on their interests. But it was undeniable that in this war against the undead, the church had indeed played a significant role. Chapter 928. Especially the characters of Archbishop rank. Summoning angelic projections, the enormous cross, and so forth, a scrambled mess of skills was thrown chaotically. The damage to the undead was also significant. Ordinary undead, dying en masse, even the high-ranking undead and undead heroes, were only sustained by those few archbishops. But it was just sustaining. If the battle had continued, the human federation would still be defeated. It was the attack of the Blood Clan that made the undead retreat, avoiding the tragedy. After speaking with the several archbishops, Fulbin again began to praise the Mage Association. He also planned to fund the construction of a new magic base for the Mage Association. Maple, who had just been cursing the other as a useless waste, now also revealed a smile. It made Ms. Li Rong purse her lips. Ah! This time, the greatest hero is still Saint Suhaid. The intelligence he provided allowed the Federation to achieve the final victory. Fulbin switched targets, starting to praise Suhaid. Suhaid also revealed a smile. "This is all within my duty, and everything was arranged by the Archbishop and the several archbishops. I hardly have such capability." "Ah! The capabilities of Saint Suhaid are there for all to see, don't be too modest," Fulbin continued. The two bantered for a while. Everyone else began to casually chat, primarily about matters regarding their return trip. The atmosphere was somewhat relaxed. At that moment, Suhaid suddenly spoke up, "Ms. Li Rong, what are your plans after returning?" Li Rong's brow furrowed, then quickly relaxed, switching to a smile, "What else can I do? Go back to manage my own city, continue to follow the association and study magic." "Yes, indeed, once we return, we will also return to a peaceful life," Suhaid said, then immediately his tone shifted, "I heard Ms. Li Rong's territory is developing quite well. Are you interested in joining my alliance? The Council is planning to integrate all transmigrators within the Federation territory, and I will be in charge of this matter." Li Rong's smile suddenly vanished, looking at Suhaid with some surprise. To integrate all transmigrators within the territory into his alliance. Li Rong looked towards the several archbishops and Maple at her side, noticing that none of them showed any extra expression. It seemed, this matter was indeed real. And even the insiders had already been informed, only the war had come too suddenly for it to be implemented. Now, with Suhaid's greatly increased status in the council, naturally, he was the one in charge of this integration. The Federation territory is extensive, and the survival rate of transmigrators within the territory is also somewhat higher. Obviously, the number of people wouldn't be small. In time, all transmigrators within the territory would come under his command. Wasn't this just creating a Federation version of Fang Hao? This was a truly terrifying matter. Especially for her. Not to mention her grudge against Suhaid, she was already backed by Fang Hao, how could she possibly join Suhaid then? If Suhaid knew that she had already joined Fang Hao. Given Suhaid's scheming nature, once he consolidated the transmigrators, the first thing he would do was to have her killed. What nonsensical idea was this from Fang Hao? Sending an enemy to such a high position, only in turn to be utterly crushed by him. As multiple thoughts flashed through her mind, her face again put on a smile. She replied, "About this matter, I need to speak to my mentor Grigor Ya. If she has no objections, naturally, I would be willing to enter your alliance." Suhaid laughed heartily, "Haha, that's really great. When the time comes, we will be one family, and we'll need to interact more, get in touch often." In this statement, another meaning was discerned. Within the church, personnel holding archbishop ranks and above, are required to remain celibate. This means they may not marry. But this does not mean they do not have women or maids serving them. So, the meaning behind Su Hade's words, upon hearing it, the several archbishops didn't say anything. Li Rong felt extremely oppressed inside. She sensed a threat. Before the battle began, Su Hade had lowered his stance to find her. Expressing that transmigrators should help each other and that in times of danger, he hoped Li Rong's hero could save his life. But now, with the war ended and the church's high officials present, Su Hade once again revealed his true nature. Yes, indeed, we should indeed interact more, Li Rong replied with a smile. Su Hade, getting the response, was even more delighted. This battle had made him the biggest beneficiary. Upon returning, his future was definitely bright. The room was not large, just a business mutual flattery. The atmosphere was still good. Just as the atmosphere was quite good, and everyone had smiles on their faces. Sudden hurried footsteps came from outside. A bang! The door was pushed open. Everyone was startled. Fulbin's face changed dramatically. What's happening? Have the undead entered the city? That was the first thought that came to his mind. The guard hurriedly explained, no, a coalition general and the third madam have been murdered in the park. What? Everyone was stunned. In the middle of the night, 2 people murdered in the park? It's not uncommon among the nobility for men and women, after a banquet, to have a private meeting in the park. Everyone soon realized what had happened. Fulbin's face turned slightly green, his chest filled with rage. But how could a private meeting end up with both being killed? As everyone furrowed their brows in thought. More screams came from outside. A rush of people burst in. The lead guard spoke softly, City Lord, esteemed sirs, an undead assassin has been found in the middle of the banquet. It's unclear how many, several officials have been assassinated and are dead. Chapter 929. Everyone's face changed dramatically. The undead had come in. Li Rong, instinctively leaning towards Morse, found that it was just as Fang Hao had said. The undead began to assassinate the officials. And at a banquet of all places, it was a total disaster. The church's Templar knights and the mages' guards also rushed in. They began to protect their respective lords. A bishop spoke, take the city lord back to his room for protection, the rest proceed to the hall to eliminate the assassins. The church was not afraid of the undead, especially with the protection of the Templar knights. Defeating a few undead assassins, there shouldn't be any problem. The crowd, surrounded by their guards, charged into the hall. At first glance, a leader beheaded a servant of the city lord's house. Simultaneously, a wandering spirit floated out from that dead body, attempting to enter into a nearby wall. Whoosh! The bishop who had just arrived made his move, and a beam of light fell from above. The wandering spirit vanished amidst its wails. It's a wandering spirit using possession, not hard to deal with. Everyone spread out and kill all these spirits, the leading bishop immediately said. All right, everyone responded in agreement. A few people scattered, each leading a few guards, taking some people and heading out. Li Rong, you return to your room first, lock the door and don't come out. You won't be of any help here, Maple instructed. Wandering spirits, a type of undead, were not high level, but they were very troublesome to deal with. They could not only possess corpses but could also pass through walls, and physical attacks hardly harmed them. Li Rong, a mage of her level, had a body near that of an average person, and it was very likely that she could be in danger. All right, be careful, Li Rong said. Go back quickly, with Morse protecting you, safety shouldn't be a problem. All right. Maple headed in one direction with her guards, and Li Rong left with Morse as well. On the way back, cries and pleas for help were all around. The situation they faced differed somewhat from what Fang Hao had anticipated. Indeed, there were assassinations, but it was a chaotic slaughter. If they managed to kill a high-ranking official, it was a stroke of luck. If not, they aimed to kill as many others as possible. Fortunately, there were hardly any civilians left in the city, so a large-scale fatality event was unlikely to occur. They locked the room door. Morse checked the room thoroughly, ensuring there was no danger. The two sat in the darkened room, not lighting the nightstone chandelier. They just sat there in silence. Don't worry, there shouldn't be any danger here, Morse said to comfort Li Rong, seeing that she was distressed. Li Rong stared blankly at her toes, and after a moment, she said, what do you think, if Su Hade died now, would it seem reasonable? Morse was stunned for a moment, then quickly understood the implication of her words. He replied, quite reasonable. Li Rong smiled, help me kill him, and don't let any suspicion fall on us. But, what about your safety? It's fine, I'll hide myself. This is our last chance to kill him, Li Rong said seriously. Morse hesitated a bit. Li Rong continued, trust me this time, I really will be all right. In the end, Morse nodded and said, how do you want him to die? Like a death by assassination will do. Understood, hide in the closet. Don't come out unless I return, Morse instructed. All right. Li Rong hid in the closet, and Morse's figure disappeared into the night. Dreamy forest. Stepping out from the teleportation array, they found themselves deep in the forest, where giant trees seemed alive, stretching out branches holding nightstones towards the path ahead, lighting a trail leading deeper into the woods. Welcome to the dreamy forest. Chapter 930. All around was quiet. The twisting branches and the swinging chandeliers made especially clear sounds. Various plants and robust trees surrounded the area. The tree branches, adorned with nightstones, slowly twisted and lit up a path leading deep into the dense forest. It was as if they had entered an ancient forest filled with magic. It was dangerous yet mysterious. Welcome to Dreamy Forest, Shinasura said softly. Yes, it's a beautiful place, Fang Hao complimented. The air was fresh, indeed very pleasant. But the night was too quiet, deep in the dense forest. It was somewhat terrifying. Thank you, follow me, Shinasura led the way, moving further inside. They walked along a small path between the trees. Soon, a slender wooden bridge appeared ahead. Fang Hao suddenly remembered a story that Goblin Mora had told him. At that time, Mora had mentioned that there was a special bridge in Dreamy Forest. If you are a bad person, when you step on this wooden bridge, you would leave black footprints. But if you are a good person, the footprints would be blue. When Mora had walked across, the footprints beneath him were blue. He proved to be a good person and boasted about it to Fang Hao for a long time. Watching Shinasura having crossed the bridge without leaving any marks, Fang Hao, Angia and Dimitrija followed behind and stepped onto the wooden bridge. And when the three of them walked across, they indeed found that they had left a trail of footprints. However, all three of their footprints were blue. Shinasura, having already reached the other side, saw their footprints and a human-like smile appeared on her face. What is this? Angia asked curiously. Shinasura smiled and replied, this bridge is a treasure of the fairy clan and also a part of Dreamy Forest. It reveals one's attitude towards Dreamy Forest as they walk across. Attitude. Fang Hao also became curious. Yes, if your heart harbors evil intentions, the footprints will turn black. If not, they will be blue. We, the fairy clan, also use this bridge to distinguish between enemies and friends, Shinasura explained. This explanation was somewhat different from what Goblin Mora had said. Mora said it was to determine good and bad people. Bad people would leave black footprints, and good people blue footprints. Back then, Fang Hao had even asked him what criteria determined good and bad people, whether it was race influence or alignment. Good and bad, such things are hard to define with a standard. Now Shinasura's explanation made much more sense. When you step onto this bridge, whether you harbor malicious thoughts against the fairy clan is the criterion for judgment. Luckily, Fang Hao didn't have any thoughts of harming the fairy clan, otherwise, the footprints would have been black, and acquiring Dreamy Forest might have been jeopardized. It's very likely that Shinasura led them this way to see what Fang Hao was thinking. Fortunately, the outcome was good. It's quite magical, Fang Hao nodded. Shinasura nodded and continued to lead the way ahead, passing the wooden bridge, her mood seeming much better. Along the way, she began to introduce the surrounding buildings to Fang Hao and the others. Fruits cultivated by the fairy clan, their taste and their special effects, among other things. All in all, it was not as somber as it had been at the start. As they moved closer to the center, the buildings became more densely packed. It was like a city enveloped by the forest. They finally reached the center of the forest. The most striking feature was the gigantic, straight oak that reached into the sky. The trunk was thick, and the crown covered the sky. It was taller and more imposing than the skyscrapers once erected in the modern world. My lord, please come inside, Shinasura said in front of a building, speaking softly. Fang Hao nodded and followed her into the building. The building wasn't large, it was about the size of a conference room. Several high-ranking members of the fairy clan were already seated inside. Seeing Shinasura bring Fang Hao and the others in, they all stood up to salute. "Please sit," Shinasura said. After Fang Hao and the others sat down, Shinasura continued, "Lord Fang Hao has arrived and will soon become the new ruler of Dreamy Forest." "Yes, leader," the fairies nodded in response. Apparently, these matters had been discussed beforehand and required no further explanation. Fang Hao hadn't expected this procedure but quickly thought of something to say. "Unity will only make us stronger, and the fairy clan will also return to glory, while Shinasura will continue as your leader, ruling over Dreamy Forest." It was a bit straightforward since he thought of it on the spot. However, after hearing this, the several high-ranking members of the fairy clan visibly relaxed. It seemed to have some effect. Following that, the fairy clan's people began some introductions. Finance officers, logistics officers, housing planning officers, each one introduced themselves and assured everyone of their duties. Each spoke passionately. Listening on the side, Angia was half asleep, her head bobbing from time to time. Finally, the introductions were over. Shinasura continued, "My lord, I'll take you to the castle." "All right." Picking up the sleeping Angia, they left the conference room. They entered a low-rise building. At the top of the building, there was a throne formed by intertwined trees. Fang Hao walked straight up and sat on the throne. At the same time, a system prompt appeared. "Giant Tree City has become your subsidiary city. You can rename the city here and govern the 8 subsidiary villages." The area where the fairy clan lived was called Dreamy Forest. But they didn't all cluster in one area. Chapter 931. There are also 8 subordinate villages. Looking at it this way, the population of Dreamy Forest is even smaller than that of the dwarves. At that time, the dwarves had 12 subordinate cities and several fortresses. The fairy clan here only has 8 villages. Giant Tree City. City level, level 12 original city. Attributes, plant growth plus 75%, fairy reproduction plus 20%. Description, a city with attributes can bring various different enhancement effects to accelerate the city's construction and development. The city level is not high, only level 12. It is at the same level as LYSS city. There are not many attributes added, only 2. But the first one, the plant growth, is truly frightening, 75%. Does this thing sprout as soon as it hits the ground? No wonder the plants outside just began to sprout, while the plants here are still lush and thriving. Unlocked blueprints, seed cultivation garden, shadowy woods, hunter's cottage. The number of blueprints that come with the city is indeed not few. Seed cultivation garden. Category, special building. Effect, seedling cultivation. Seedling cultivation, inside the building, plant seeds/seedlings can be nurtured and improved. Description, nature has gifted life. Building requirements, hardwood 800, stone bricks 1200, iron 500, natural gem 5, perfect essence 1. A very practical building. Especially for a territory in the development phase, this building can play a big role. Shadowy woods. Category, special building. Description, established within the region, a dense forest constructed in an orderly fashion that can cause enemies who enter rashly to lose their way. Construction required, tree seeds 300, natural gem 3. If I'm not mistaken, it should be a maze formed by trees. It can serve as a defensive measure. I wonder how this maze would deal with flying races. It can't be that the canopy is sealed off at the top. Continuing to look down. Hunter's Cottage is a building for training archers, equivalent to a shooting range in human factions. I've finished looking through all the unlocked blueprints. It can be said that the fairy clan's blueprints are all related to plants. The Shadowy Woods blueprint requires direct seeds and natural gemstones for construction, without materials like wood or stone. Fang Hao put away the Book of Lords. Looking down at Shinasura, Fang Hao spoke softly, "Let's go, come with me to Tasco City, and have the Bronze Bull cooperate with you to drive the orcs out of Furious Lion City first." "Yes, my lord," Shinasura immediately nodded and said. In Tasco City, at the City Lord's mansion. A screen appeared in the hall, and Fang Hao and 3 shadows walked out from the screen. Late at night, the hall was empty, with no one in sight. Fang Hao, followed by the 3 people, walked out the door and looked at 2 Tauren holding battle axes leaning against the door, sound asleep. Even as the 4 people approached, the two Tauren didn't realize anything. Hey! Fang Hao kicked one of them with his foot. With eyes closed, the Tauren just changed position and continued sleeping. You're quite gentle. Angia remarked. Then she stepped forward and kicked. With a bang, the body of the Tauren flew out 3 or 4 meters before rolling to a stop. Who's there? Damn it, how dare you kick me, I'm going to split you in two. With such a commotion, both the Tauren who got kicked away and the other one sleeping woke up. Brandishing their battle axes, they bellowed in anger. Fang Hao looked at the two Tauren and said, I'm Fang Hao, tell Bronze Bull to come see me. The Tauren charging over with the battle axe had his bull's eyes widen, then shrink. The forward momentum slowed, and he immediately knelt, sliding to a halt in front of Fang Hao. Bowing his head he said, Lord, I was wrong. His attitude in admitting his mistake was very sincere. Go then, bring Bronze Bull to me. Oh, right, the Tauren guard got up, turned around, and walked out. It wasn't long before Bronze Bull, gleaming golden and bare-chested, strode in. Seeing Fang Hao and Dimitrija among others, he immediately saluted, Lord. Bronze Bull had joined the territory for quite some time. He was considered an old hero. His loyalty had also reached a very high level. Teluk, this is Shinesara, the leader of Dreamy Forest, who's now also a member of the territory. Get to know each other, Fang Hao introduced softly. Leader Shinesara. Mr. Teluk. The two actually knew of each other, but had not had much interaction. As for Shinesara's joining, Bronze Bull was not too surprised. He even felt it was quite reasonable. Bronze Bull took a seat to one side. Fang Hao continued, now Furious Lion City is attacking Dreamy Forest, arrange manpower tomorrow first to help Dreamy Forest resolve this conflict. Understood, my lord. Tomorrow morning, I'll arrange for people to head over, Bronze Bull immediately responded. After those orcs retreat, arrange someone to probe Furious Lion City's attitude and see if we can resolve this peacefully, Fang Hao thought for a moment and then continued. All right. At this moment, Angia, who was to the side, suddenly interrupted, Fang Hao, I want to be in charge of this negotiation. When coming out, Angia mentioned that she was driven out of the Furious Lion City. In her tone, one could sense some resentment. Fang Hao pondered for a moment, then nodded, Bronze Bull, let Angia take charge this time, and you give her support. This, well, okay, Bronze Bull hesitated but still agreed. Angia leading this matter. What was there left to discuss? Most likely, it was going to lead to a fight. But since Fang Hao had said so, he didn't need to worry too much about it. Chapter 932. Shinesara, do you have anything else to add? Fang Hao continued to ask. Shinesara thought for a moment and said, the location where we will battle Furious Lion City, I will mark it for you. They have a considerable number of troops, it would be best if you could arrange for more forces on your side. How many of them are there? Bronze Bull asked. Over 20,000. All right, I've got it, I'll bring troops there tomorrow, Bronze Bull replied. The two of them then whispered to each other for a while, refining the route and details. Finally, seeing that there was nothing else for them to discuss, Fang Hao said, all right, then we'll settle the plan like this for now. If anything comes up, you two keep in touch. After finishing, he released the teleportation screen again. Taking a few people, they left. The next day, the rising sun draped the earth in streaks of dawn light. Santibel Fortress. Within the city lord's residence, soldiers in armor were moving in and out of the city lord's residence, carrying out the corpses of the dead and laying them in the courtyard. No one had expected that Odis would arrange an assassination at the last moment. One by one, the corpses were covered with white cloths bearing the church's insignia, lined up in a long row. There were more than 10 corpses. Li Rong roughly identified them. She did not find the target she was hoping to see, and glanced at the dark elf beside her. The latter nodded slightly but said nothing more. At that moment, the room's door opened. Several high-ranking members of the alliance came out from inside. Maple immediately spotted Li Rong not far away, waved, and gestured for her to come over. Li Rong walked over quickly. Maple took her aside and in a low voice said, Su Hade has been killed. What? Li Rong looked shocked and added, how is that possible? Maple nodded and explained, this morning, people from the church went to his room and found him already dead. The Knights Templar responsible for his protection are dead as well. Several archbishops are furious and are demanding that the Federation attack the great cemetery of Odis. The most up-to-date noves are published on Fruit Noello. Is it that serious? Indeed, it is quite serious. Suhaid was nurtured by the archbishop, and with the capabilities he demonstrated this time, he was very likely to be the next archbishop. Now that the war is over and he has been killed, what will they tell the archbishop when they get back? They are very anxious, Maple explained. Li Rong only knew that Suhaid was a saint, not realizing his position was so high. And he was a person groomed by the archbishop. What a pity, he was so outstanding. He would have received a lot of rewards when he returned for his major contributions, but in the end, he died here, Li Rong lamented. Stay close to me during the day and do not come out of your room at night. I will arrange some extra guards for you, Maple continued. Oh, all right. Maple nodded, leading her outside. Let's go, today we are overseeing the front lines, we shouldn't delay any longer. The three of them headed to the assembly and walked out together. Ha! Fang Hao let out a big yawn. He walked down the stairs. In the ground floor hall, the maids had already started their work. Cleaning. Ira, plant this seed somewhere, Fang Hao casually tossed a seed over. Ira caught it in her palm and asked curiously, Oh, master, what kind of seed is this? An oak, I guess. Plant it near the Lord's mansion, he replied. Oh, all right, master. After giving instructions, Fang Hao began his morning exercise. During his morning run, Fang Hao suddenly stopped. He saw a giant tree rapidly growing upward from the backyard, surpassing the surrounding walls, then the entire Lord's mansion. Damn! Chapter 933. Fuck! He couldn't help but blurt out. The tree shot up rapidly. Before his very eyes, it grew to the height of 5 or 6 stories, branches spreading out to form a lush canopy. Once the oak had grown, a wave of green rippled out from the tree as its center and spread. It reached the entire city. The next second, in the flower bed, tiny sprouts that had just broken through the soil, the size of fingernails, were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lush and verdant, they grew into a dense cluster of flowers. After another blink, the cluster had bloomed, emitting a light fragrance. He continued to look around. The trees lining the road were also sprouting green leaves. In various flower beds, the moonflower grass that the deer had planted had also broken ground and grown slender flowering stems. The entire territory seemed to enter midsummer, vibrant with greenery. This oak tree, when planted, actually had this effect. Every plant within the city was affected. This could save a lot of money, he remarked. He remembered when Rebecca had taken him to attend her best friend Olivia's ball, she had mentioned it. The noble lords in the city would all hire wood element mages. They would go to their residences and stimulate the growth of the plants in the courtyards to ensure a pleasing living environment. It was also a symbol of power and privilege. Now, it would be much easier here, directly affecting all the plants in the city. I wonder if it would also be like this in winter. He continued to finish the rest of his run. Many onlookers had already gathered in front of the manor house. The maids, the earth spirit girls, and even the skeleton craftsmen had gathered. Looking up at the gigantic tree, they whispered among themselves. Seeing Fang Hao approaching, the maid Yuan immediately came over and said, Master, a big tree has grown in the backyard. Yes, it's okay, this tree can change the environment of the city, haven't you noticed that the flowers in the city have bloomed? Fang Hao explained. I noticed, but this tree is so big, if we cut it down, couldn't we get a lot of wood? No need to exploit the resources like that. He had everyone disperse to attend to their respective matters. The backyard was vast. The maids had divided it into several areas, a garden, a gazebo, a vegetable garden, an activity field, Angie's boxing practice area, and a huge hot spring pool. Now, there was also a giant tree. It occupied a large area all by itself. In front of the giant tree, Ira, Angia, and Little White were whispering about something. The negotiations with Furious Lion City hadn't begun yet, so Angia was still staying with Fang Hao. Fang Hao also walked over. The attributes of the giant tree were presented right before his eyes. Common root oak. Category, special building. Ability, verdant forest, common root oak. Ruin wood forest, the plants in a certain area are enhanced by the energy of the oak. Common root oak, closely connected to the ancient oak. Description: shares roots with the main oak. A tree had properties like that of a building. This was the first time he had encountered such a thing. It had two abilities. Verdant forest apparently was the city's plants being stimulated to grow and bloom. Indeed, this ability was quite remarkable. The environment was very important for a territory. Now, this place was looking less and less like an undead territory. The second ability was the common root oak. From Fang Hao's understanding, it was very likely connected to the even larger tree in Dreamy Forest. But the specific effects remained unclear. He would see if he could find out more later. Master, this tree is really magical, Ira remarked. This tree had grown right before their eyes, and all the flowers and plants in the garden had sprouted. The environment had improved instantly. This is an oak from the fairy clan, so having some special abilities is quite normal, Fang Hao explained with a smile. Oh, fairy clan, Ira nodded. With this oak, these flowers and plants won't die so easily. That's great. After chatting with the three for a while, Fang Hao then left the manor house. Ira went to prepare breakfast. Elsewhere. Great Cemetery of Odis, Blackhorn City. King Odis sat on the white bone throne. His hollow pupils swept over the gathering of undead officials below. He spoke, "How was the operation last night?" At that moment, a human undead stepped forward and began, "King Odis, last night we dispatched 50 wandering spirits from the northeast shadowy forest to detour to Fort Santa." "Get to the results," Odis interrupted impatiently. "Based on the information from the Faceless One's hut, over 20 were killed, including a saint from the church," the undead replied. "Oh? To think a saint was killed. Not a bad haul," Odis was somewhat surprised. "Yes, my king, this assassination was very successful. There will be internal chaos for a while, buying us time to retreat." Wandering spirits weren't very high-ranking undead, and no one really expected them to assassinate any high officials. But killing a saint was truly an unexpected gain. Odis nodded, signaling him to step back for now. Then he continued, "How is the Blood Clan army doing?" As this question was raised, the room fell suddenly silent. "Wang Haiman, you speak," Odis called out. At this, a human stepped out from among the undead. In his 40s, his complexion somewhat sallow, he wore a Book of Lords on his waist. Chapter 934. If Fang Hao were present, he would have noticed that the opponent's Book of Lords looked exactly the same as his own. This transmigrator had also joined the undead camp. Wang Haiman stepped forward, pondered for a moment, and said, "Your Majesty, a message has come from the front-line fortress. The army of the Blood Clan has conquered another fortress yesterday." Rustling. The surrounding undead began to whisper among themselves. The sound of skeletal friction echoed throughout the entire hall. Since when has besieging cities become like strolling in the streets? One a day, how did the Blood Clan from the north suddenly burst forth with such formidable power? Bang! Odis slammed his hand heavily on the back of his chair, and the room finally quieted down. Wang Haiman continued, "The transmigrator stationed at the front line has taken some photos, which are meant for your review, Your Majesty." He opened the Book of Lords and found the pictures. A skeleton attendant took the Book of Lords and handed it to Odis. Odis looked at the Book of Lords, and his soul fire trembled violently. There were only 4 photos. The first 2 showed bone dragons swooping down, the third was of a group of bone dragons circling the fortress. The fourth was of the aerial ship appearing in the sky and the bombs it dropped. There were no more photos after that. Odis' withered hand full of rings clenched tightly onto the armrest of the chair. At this moment, a long-absent panic finally rose in his heart. Both the enemy's attack trends and the military forces they currently displayed posed a threat to him. A threat to his life. This was the first time such a fear from deep within his soul had surfaced since he had become an immortal being. Odis casually tossed the Book of Lords back, and Wang Haiman immediately picked it up and passed it around for the other undead officials to examine. After viewing them, all of the undead showed signs of unease and panic. With the enemy possessing bone dragons and an aerial ship, "Gentlemen, what should we do?" Odis asked. After a brief discussion below, a Tauran skeleton stepped forward and said gravely, "Your Majesty, what we need to do now is to buy time until our forces can retreat from the south." "Methods, I want methods." The Tauran skeleton continued, "I believe, while reinforcing the next fortress, we could try negotiating with the Blood Clan to slow down the enemy's speed of attack." "Your Majesty, I support this idea. The Great Cemetery has always had good relations with the Blood Clan. The Red Duke has had several trade interactions with the Great Cemetery before. We could try talking, a goblin skeleton added. This idea is worth a try. Let's listen to their demands to get through the current difficulties. One by one, the skeletons stood up, agreeing that they should make contact. Having finally become immortal beings, they certainly did not wish to die again. It makes no sense for the Blood Clan to attack the undead. The Blood Clan in the north had a small population, and the undead could not transform them into blood slaves. The likelihood of negotiation was quite high. Talk it over, and if it can be settled with money, so much the better. As long as they could survive, money could always be earned back, but once dead, there would truly be no opportunity left. After pondering for a while, Otis finally nodded and said, "Glover, you will be responsible for these negotiations. The Great Cemetery is willing to resolve this conflict with the Blood Clan, and we are open to discussing their demands." Glover did not expect to be thrust into this role. Still, he stepped forward stiffly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Otis nodded, "That will be all for now. Strengthen the defenses of the fortress." "Yes." The crowd accepted the commands and left the royal palace. On the border of the dreamy forest, tens of thousands of orcs blocked the perimeter, constantly cursing and provoking. Just 2 days ago, they were still fighting the fairy clan every day. Today, for some unknown reason, the fairy clan had retreated back into the dreamy forest, giving up the land and watching them from afar. No matter how much they provoked, the fairy clan did not come out to continue fighting. On their part, they ended up cursing so much that they became hoarse. Behind the orcs, a Tauren wearing heavy plate armor stood with his hands behind his back, gazing down from afar. The orc was about 2 meters tall with a robust physique. His hair was exceptionally lush. He appeared like a standing grey lion. Furious Lion Clan, a race known for its fiery temper and natural aptitude for combat. At the moment, he frowned as he observed the situation below. Though the fairy clan had retreated into the forest, they had not dispersed. They lined up in order, ready to charge at any moment. There was an unusual feeling. "Commander, those fairies simply won't come out, and the people below have gone hoarse from yelling," a soldier of the orc ran over and immediately reported. The furious lion commander still furrowed his brows. Considering the battles of the past few days, this cultivated land was very important to the fairy clan. But why weren't they coming out now? It was confusing what they really meant. "Switch to another group to continue yelling, and the rest prepare for battle, do not relax," continued the furious lion commander. "Oh, okay." The soldier ran off. The orcs below switched people and continued to stand in the distance and yell. When they got tired, they switched and continued yelling. This happened during the third wave of replacements. As expected, an unusual situation arose. A group of orc troops suddenly appeared from the southeast. It included orcs from various tribes. In the center of the formation, one could see the figures of the Tauren. "Commander, a troop of orcs has arrived from that side, probably numbering close to 10,000, an orc soldier reported as he approached. The furious lion commander nodded, "Have them stop advancing and inquire about their intentions." "Yes," the orc soldier departed. Then, an orc was seen heading straight for the opposing orc formation. Shortly after, he rushed back. "Commander, they say they are the army from Tasco City, allies with the Dreamy Forest, and they are asking us to leave this place," he reported. "What?" The furious lion commander's expression changed. He knew of Tasco City and had heard that it had recently changed city lords. Now, they dared to meddle in the affairs of Furious Lion City. Truly, they were bold. The furious lion commander, just as he was about to angrily declare it impossible, he saw the fairy clan, previously hidden in the Dreamy Forest, stepping out in neat columns from the forest. Together with the army from Tasco City, they flanked him from both sides. It turned out that these fairies had been waiting for reinforcements. The furious lion commander had a particularly ugly look on his face, but if a real battle ensued, facing a pincer attack from two forces, he would also be at a disadvantage. He spoke coldly, "Fine, Tasco City, is it? I'll remember this. Have the troops retreat." "Yes, Commander." As the three sides remained cautiously vigilant, the army from Furious Lion City began to gather and retreat. They gradually moved out of the battlefield range, retreating in the direction of Furious Lion City. At the same time, a wave of victory cheers erupted among the fairy clan. No matter what, the enemy had retreated. They also had a chance to breathe. In the fairy forest, near the border, inside a small cottage, Shinasura and Bronze Bull were sitting inside. Shinasura spoke, leaving them to retreat will surely result in them attacking again, we should have used the army to keep them here. From the reluctance of the furious Lion City army as they retreated, it was clear they would counterattack, and letting them go was like letting the tiger return to the mountain. Bronze Bull shook his head, we came in haste, and we do not have a numbers advantage in troop size, if a real battle ensues, we are not afraid of them. Forcefully fighting, our few troops would likely suffer losses. If a real battle were to happen, the undead army would naturally attack, and there would be no need for these regular soldiers. Fair enough, what should we do next? Shinasura continued. Bronze Bull thought for a moment, then said, I will arrange for someone to go to Furious Lion City. We'll conduct negotiations at the border between the two sides. Okay, understood. In the main city, Fang Hao lay on the grass in the backyard, resting his head on Ira's round and soft thighs. He held a sheet of paper in his hands, chuckling as he read the content. Today, while visiting a transmigrator shop, he discovered someone was selling a novel they had written. The price was not expensive, 5 pages for 2 units of iron. Fang Hao exchanged for a copy, chuckling as he read. The writing was quite good, telling the story of the protagonist who became a city lord's attendant and gradually climbed up the ranks through cultivation. It also interspersed some affairs about taking care of the worries of the chief mistress, the second mistress, and the third mistress. Quite interesting. Fang Hao finished 1 page, then handed it to Ira beside him, who also followed along. As the two whiled away the time, a nearby oak tree gently trembled. One of its branches formed a mini version of Shinasura and extended toward Fang Hao. My lord, the army from Furious Lion City has retreated, it said. Chapter 935. The miniature Shinasura was somewhat adorable. Like a figurine, it hung along the branches, appearing before the two of them. For Fang Hao, it was nothing new, he had noticed the changing Shinasura when the canopy shook. But Ira let out a soft cry, clearly startled. It was only when she saw that the form was Shinasura that she calmed down. My lord, the army of Furious Lion City has withdrawn, and the city lord of Bronze Bull City is preparing for the upcoming negotiation, said the miniature Shinasura. Fang Hao nodded, all right, once the negotiation time is confirmed, let me know, and I'll send Angia over. Given the current situation, a peaceful resolution seems unlikely. Whether it's the decade-long feud between Furious Lion City and the Fairy Clan or Angia's resentment towards her past experiences, the negotiation could more easily lead to war. Especially since the orcs have always believed in survival of the fittest. The strong have the right to speak and possess more privileges. Furious Lion City might not consider itself at a disadvantage, thinking that the alliance between Dreamy Forest and Tasco City is just between weaklings. Obviously, the negotiations will not be successful then. But Fang Hao still chose to negotiate. Firstly, to delay the start of the war. He tried to make the start of the war coincide with the end of the war at the Great Cemetery of Odis. Secondly, it was also to show other subordinate forces an attitude. Hoping for peace is still the impression Fang Hao, as a lord, needs to maintain. Otherwise, having wars frequently at 8 Peaks Mountain, the Great Cemetery, and now Furious Lion City, could easily create an image of being overly belligerent. Therefore, negotiations had to take place, even though he already knew it was not likely to resolve peacefully. Understood, Shinasura said, and then the miniature body quickly disappears. It transformed back into its original branches. After a while, Ira finally spoke, Master, does this tree also have the ability to transmit messages? I suppose so, Fang Hao was somewhat uncertain too. Being able to transform into the form of Shinasura must be another ability of the oak tree. Kin of the oak. Even though there's such a distance between Dreamy Forest and the main city here, it can still transform into Shinasura using some kind of connection to transmit messages. Or rather, this oak tree is a part of Shinasura itself. It can freely transfer consciousness. This is quite convenient for message transmission, they can be conveyed in real time. It seems somewhat similar to my own ability called God's Presence. The distance is even farther and the effect is even better. I also have to be careful from now on interacting with Ira and others here. It would be awkward to be caught. After discussing matters of the Dreamy Forest, he continued to lie on Ira's lap and read the novel he had bought. Ah! The weather is really nice. After lunch, he came back from the skeleton craftsman. On the way, he saw the innkeeper Winnie, holding a lampshade. "Lord," Winnie greeted with a smile. "Good afternoon, innkeeper," Fang Hao responded with a smile too. Spending a winter in the main city, Winnie's skin had not only become more tender, but her figure had also become much fuller, not like the rural innkeeper she was before. She seemed like a ripe, juicy peach. Seeing that Fang Hao still referred to her as innkeeper, Winnie rolled her eyes at him. Then she said, "Sir, the lampshade in my room is broken, could you help me change it? Those skeletons are too clumsy." So, it was the lampshade she needed to be changed. "All right, let's go." Winnie didn't have her own place to stay, just a room within a building. Fang Hao had set a rule for people within his domain that heroes could have their own detached houses, private hot springs, gardens, and some privileges. Maids could do the same, as long as they could become heroes. Then they could move out of here, owning their own detached houses. This was also the reason why the maids kept urging Angia to train every day. Winnie was no exception, she too had been training all winter, but she wasn't improving fast and was now a level 3 warrior. Following Winnie into the room. The room was very clean, with a bed and a set of table and chairs. On the table were also pen and paper, on which were written some of Winnie's daily recorded spirit recipes. "Is it this lamp?" Fang Hao pointed to one above their heads. "A single nightstone." The nightstone chandelier had a shade. When resting, you could lower the shade to cover the nightstone. It acted like turning off the light. "Yes," Winnie said. Fang Hao nodded, pulling a chair over to underneath the chandelier. "This kind of task, ordinary skeletons truly couldn't do. You order them to dismantle the lamp, skeletons could complete it, but if you tell them to remove the shade above, the skeletons might not unhook it properly and instead just yank it down." Standing on the chair, Fang Hao looked up and began to remove the already broken lampshade. And below, Winnie, who was holding the chair steady, shifted her eyes slightly. "I'll hold it steady for you." "Great." Winnie placed her hands on his legs. However, halfway through, Fang Hao felt a soft sensation coming from his legs. He saw Winnie leaning on his thigh, her delicate hands slipping under his clothes. Chapter 936. 8-pack ABS, each muscle of the chest sharply defined. But not those overtrained, exaggerated muscles. His physique was extremely proportional. Meanwhile, Winnie, her eyes full of surprise, caressed them unconsciously. Her touch made his heart itch with a peculiar sensation. He leaned over and tapped her forehead, "Taking advantage of me, aren't you?" Winnie's face flushed red as she squeezed out a smile. Turning her head to the side, she said, "What's wrong with a sister touching her little brother?" When they first met, Winnie used to call him little brother, but ever since finding out Fang Hao's identity, she could only address him formally as Sir. In public, she had to bow and pay attention to etiquette. Fang Hao didn't pay her any mind and threw the damaged lampshade to one side, replacing it with a new one. After everything was replaced and he stepped down from the chair, Winnie's cheeks were even redder. Despite her usually making risque jokes with patrons in the tavern, now she seemed like a shy young girl. "Madam, your face is too red," Fang Hao teased. Winnie glared at him, "What's red? Your face is the one that's red." She picked up a water cup nearby and poured him a glass of fruit wine. Continuing, she said, "Sit for a while, I have something to talk to you about." Fang Hao's heart skipped a beat. Could the landlady's loyalty have reached 100? Not to say, this lady has become more and more charming over the winter. "Okay," Fang Hao took the fruit wine and sat down. Winnie thought for a moment before continuing, "Actually, it's not a big deal, but winter is past and you should arrange some work for me, I can't always be idle here." That issue. It made sense. Winnie wasn't considered a maid, and she hadn't been assigned any tasks during her stay in the city over the winter. Spending every day with the maids in the training ground, she had trained herself up to a third-order warrior. Winter had passed and it was only natural for her to want to find a job for herself. Fang Hao considered the various shops he owned. The shops in Pruel and Lyss City were now operating normally and didn't need her presence. "How about this? I'm also planning to open a hot pot restaurant in the Federation's Silver Wing City, and when the time comes, you can be the boss." The plan to open a shop in Silver Wing City had been in the works for quite some time. However, with many events happening, it had slipped his mind. Now that Winnie had come to him, the idea immediately resurfaced. The shop still needed to be opened, it couldn't be put off indefinitely. It could be inferred from Li Rong being able to attend noble banquets, that whether for expanding one's connections or for potential collaborations, nobility was open to rich individuals joining their ranks. Then, starting more shops in Silver Wing City and pushing one's own people into the circle of nobility would also be beneficial for him. Silver Wing City? You can expand your business there. Winnie's eyes widened in amazement. For her, Silver Wing City was a place she had only heard of. The core city of 100 Cities Federation, and residents there were all high and mighty lords. Yet, how about it, are you willing to go? Willing, Winnie nodded, then hesitated a little. Is there already a shop? Not yet, just wait in the city for a few days, and I will arrange for someone to take care of the shop details, said Fang Hao. Fang Hao wasn't too worried about the shop matter. With Rebecca and Olivia's close friendship, getting their attention on a suitable shop wasn't a problem. He would provide the money and buy the shop. Oh, all right, Winnie nodded. Once the shop matter was settled, the room became somewhat quiet. Fang Hao, do you still remember my tavern? Winnie asked again. When he first visited Pruel City, Fang Hao would frequent Winnie's tavern. His goal was to check the bounty tasks on the tavern's notice board, yet Winnie mistook it as a sign that he fancied her. She had once chided him, saying that he, being so young, shouldn't always think about such things. In that residential area for commoners, Winnie was famously beautiful. The patrons of the Rose Tavern included not a few men with ulterior motives. Having seen various pursuits and innuendos, she naturally thought Fang Hao was one of them. Later, the city lord colluded with the Blood Clan, selling a group of civilians to them. On the way, Fang Hao's people rescued them. That's when she realized Fang Hao owned such a vast territory, as well as hordes of undead. I remember a very popular tavern, lots of customers, Fang Hao said. I could never believe I would get to go out or even dress up in a gown to attend a noble's banquet. It will get even better, trust me, Fang Hao said with a smile. Winnie nodded and with a light cough, she said, when we're alone later, can I still call you brother? Is that okay? Sure. By the way, I've learned some massage techniques, do you want me to give you a massage? Winnie's face turned even redder. With her face blushing, the atmosphere started to feel a bit off. Fang Hao also became somewhat nervous. Sure, that sounds good. After speaking, he lay down on the bed. Winnie stepped forward, sat on the edge of the bed, and gently placed her hands on his back and waist. At this moment, there came a shout from downstairs, Master, Mr. Bok is looking for you. It was Yuan's voice. Did that mean they'd started calling out citywide because they couldn't find him? Fang Hao sat up and glanced at Winnie, who was still somewhat flushed, and said, next time, come to my room next time. Having said that, he walked outside. Winnie was left alone, her cheeks still a vibrant red. On his way downstairs, Fang Hao glanced at the Book of Lords. Winnie's loyalty to you is 98 points. Indeed, it had reached a certain height. Although it wasn't 100 points, 98 was already considered very high. It was quite normal to have some special feelings. After going downstairs and finding Yuan, Fang Hao learned that Bok was looking for him because the shoes had been made according to the blueprint and he wanted Fang Hao to have a look. Fang Hao nodded and walked towards the tanner's area. Capital of Lizardmen Zetzerlan. Escorted by a throng of Lizardmen officials, Queen Anastasia paced leisurely up the lengthy, layer by layer stone steps. At the top of the 1,000 steps stood a colossal temple. The walls towered high, the pavilions majestic. A solemn and ancient aura descended upon them. The ancient Saint Temple. It was the tallest building in Zetzerlan, even higher than the Queen's royal palace. It symbolized the status of the ancient saint in everyone's hearts. How is it, the environment here should be more suitable for our lives than where you come from, Queen Anastasia said as she walked and spoke to someone by her side. To the right of the Queen was Dimitrija, who had come upon invitation. Dimitrija nodded, yes, it's quite nice. The climate here was indeed more conducive to the survival of the lizardmen. Of course, a big reason for the peace and tranquility was that other races could not adapt to the local environment. If you wish, you are always welcome to live here. With your abilities, you could have a higher position in the Holy Order, a better life, and even more, continued the Queen. At this time, the Lizardman Queen was no longer beating around the bush, but directly making her proposition. Opportunities without Fang Hao around were rare, Any hesitation would only lead to missed opportunities. Hearing the queen's words, Dmitrija walked on in silence without responding. The queen, not giving up, continued, the power of the Holy Order is gradually weakening, the ancient saint no longer guides us, fewer of our kin are ascending to heroes. At this rate, I'm afraid we'll fade from the world stage, becoming an obscure, minor force, eventually consumed by a larger power. Dmitrija paused slightly, hesitated a moment. Speaking up, she said, seize the opportunity, the Holy Order will receive support and help. The queen's brow furrowed slightly, her brown vertical pupils revealing a hint of confusion. She pondered the meaning of these words. Was this a message to seize the matter of an alliance with Fang Hao? A transmigrator, to wield such great power. Even if both sides expressed the intention of an alliance, it didn't quite amount to taking the initiative on her own side, did it? Or did Dmitrija know something, that Fang Hao's true strength was far greater than what she had seen? Falling silent for a short while, the queen didn't continue to discuss this topic. Instead, she introduced the city's architecture and some local matters in a low voice. Continuing upward, they finally arrived in front of the temple. Chapter 937. The temple loomed even larger and more majestic than it appeared from below. Standing on the smooth stone stairs, Priest Tiktata led several ancient saint priests, swiftly exiting from within. A brief purification ritual was held in front of the door. After bowing down and paying their respects before the door, the queen and Dmitrija, one after another, stepped into the temple. The grand hall was majestic and splendid. An aura of ancient solemnity pervaded, imbuing it with a heavy and commanding presence. The stone pillars of the temple were engraved with lifelike carvings, with the walls on both sides depicting scenes of the lizardmen performing sacrifices. At the center of the temple stood a grand altar. Atop the altar, a massive statue sat enthroned. The statue resembled a lizardman, but its features were indistinct and unrecognizable. The queen and Dmitrija knelt and worshipped before the statue. Meanwhile, a lizardman priest began to chant softly at the side, reciting in the sacred tongue. The ritual did not last long. Once everything concluded, the queen, accompanied by the upper echelons of the lizardmen, walked out of the temple. Regarding the lizardmen personally escorted by the queen, although there were no discussions, some guesses could be made. A few days prior, in the list of potential husbands for the queen, a stranger's name had suddenly appeared. All the clans speculated about the origin of this person, but they could never quite figure it out. But now, the matter could not have been clearer. This fourth name was none other than the strange lizardman now receiving personal hospitality from the queen. However, historically, the choice for the queen's husband had never included anyone from outside their species. This time, why was there a foreigner? Descending the 1,000-layer stone stairs, the extravagant procession began its return to the royal palace. Dmitrija wanted to bid farewell to the queen and return to his own dwelling. But as the queen mounted the back of the Triceratops, she smiled and said, "I have prepared a midday banquet, it won't be too late to return afterwards. The guards of your city are heroes, Fang Hao won't be in any danger." Without waiting for Dmitrija to reply, the Triceratops had already stood up. Shifting its immense body, it walked toward the direction of the royal palace. Beside them, a lizardman attendant hurried over, leading a four-legged giant lizard by the hand. "Mr. Dmitrija, please take your seat." There was a rather well-decorated chair on the back of the giant lizard. Dmitrija had no choice but to mount the giant lizard, and after sitting down, he followed the procession towards the royal palace. The lizardman's capital city was bustling. The buildings were predominantly made of earthy yellow stone bricks, with the streets displaying symbols and insignias of the ancient saints everywhere. Along the way, the lizardman inhabitants knelt and bowed, shouting "Long live the Queen!" Unlike other main cities, this capital was inhabited solely by lizardmen. Not a single foreigner could be seen, not even the merchants that traveled the world. The reason was simple: other races simply could not set foot here. The swamp, the primeval forest. These formed a life sanctuary engulfed by nature herself. Upon reaching the kingdom, the queen hosted a grand banquet. She invited officials and generals who were staying in the capital to join the feast. All sorts of foods and drinks to the taste of lizardmen filled the lengthy dining table. Many officials were somewhat perplexed. Feeling that the queen was showcasing something, placing exotic foods that could not be found outside but were well suited to lizardmen's tastes on the banquet table. Soon, the midday banquet concluded. Amidst the low murmurs of conversation, a lizardman clad in red armor suddenly stood up. After saluting the queen, he turned his gaze toward Dmitrija. "Mr. Dmitrija, I challenge you." He issued his challenge without any preamble. The bustling hall instantly fell silent. Everyone looked at the lizardman general clad in blood-red armor. Red General Liadazan, a Tier 4 orange hero. He was also one of the 4 candidates for the Queen's husband from within the Holy Empire. And one of the competent and powerful individuals among their people. Born of the same clan as the Queen. He was also highly valued by her. Before this, he was even kept at her side as the leader of her guard. If Dmitrija had not appeared, Liadazan would have been the prime choice for the Queen's consort. The hall was silent. The eyes of the assembly shifted from Liadazan to the Queen in the front, who remained silent, seemingly enjoying the spectacle, and then turned to Dmitrija. "On what grounds?" Dmitrija put down his utensils and looked directly at Liadazan. Liadazan didn't expect this question. Did he need a reason? He certainly couldn't say it was to fight for the right to mate with the Queen. After a moment of thought, he said, "Just a simple contest, to stretch the limbs after a meal. Don't you know that strenuous exercise after eating can lead to sagging stomach?" Dmitrija continued. "Ah? What?" Liadazan was taken aback by the response. What sagging stomach? He'd never heard such terms before. Then, Liadazan pressed on, "Does that mean you're afraid?" As he spoke, he glanced sideways without being too obvious. After a moment's consideration, Dmitrija finally said, "Fine, a little spar, but let's stop at the first touch." "My word!" The crowd of lizardmen were stunned. Compared to the straightforward Liadazan, this Dmitrija seemed eloquent. His words were simple, yet they conveyed his meaning clearly. Clap, clap. The Queen interrupted the exchange with applause from the side. Turning to the side, she ordered, "Prepare the dueling grounds." "Yes," the servant replied and withdrew. Chapter 938. The Queen also got involved. This competition, it seemed, was not going to be simple. Everyone waited a bit longer in the banquet hall. After the servant came to report that everything was ready, everyone stood up, followed the Queen out of the royal palace, and hurried toward the arena. The Holy Combat Arena. Established early on, it has been in use to this day. From the outside, it's a massive circular structure. A place for the lizardmen to compete. The competitors were not just slaves performing for the nobility. It was a place for testing one's wrestling skills. Every year, warriors who emerged from here would be recruited by the army and the temple. It served as a means of selecting talents. Dmitrija was led into the center of the arena. On the platform above, were the Queen and several ministers. The surroundings were filled with residents and city dignitaries who had come to watch. The arena was bustling. In the afternoon, the sunlight was somewhat dazzling. Dmitrija calmly looked at Liadazan opposite him. "The competition you speak of, is it just a performance for the others?" The armor reflected the fierce sun overhead, casting blurry shadows. "Performance? No, the people here cheer for the winner. It's the quickest way to recognize a strong warrior," said Liadazan, raising his hands towards the crowd. "Liadazan! Liadazan! Liadazan!" Shouts rose from the stands, all the lizardmen cheering for Liadazan. Whether among the commoners or the nobles, Liadazan had a high reputation. Otherwise, they wouldn't chant his name so unitedly. The people above gestured to the ones below, asking if the two were ready. The competitors nodded slightly and saluted the Queen above the platform. Thump! The sounding of the bell marked the start of the battle. Both drew their weapons. Liadazan wielded a majestic battle saber, while Dmitrija retained his long sword. Seeing that both were prepared, Liadazan with his saber in hand, stomped on the hard ground and quickly moved towards Dmitrija. His steps quickened, turning into a jog. The blood-red combat boots stamped deep footprints into the ground. The jog sped up to a charge. Almost simultaneously, Dmitrija also stopped standing still. With a push from his feet, he launched rapidly forward, countering Liadazan with a charge of his own. Both were close combat orange heroes, their physiques far surpassed those of ordinary warriors. In the blink of an eye, gold and red clashed together. At the moment of contact, they both launched their attacks instantly. Liadazan sunk his body, sweeping out his saber waist-high in a slashing motion. The whistling of the blade kicked up dust from the ground. Dmitrija, with his long sword horizontal, clanged. At the same time as the metallic clash, he thrust the tip upwards, targeting the gap between the helmet and armor at the throat. Liadazan tilted his head back abruptly, the sword tip grazing the edge of his helmet, producing a harsh scraping sound. Taking the opportunity, Dmitrija pressed forward, his long sword launching aggressive attacks. Flashes of sword light passed, slashing and sweeping, one sword strike following another. The sword tip targeted, the eyes on the helmet, gaps in the armor, both quick and fierce. Liadazan, too, possessed strong combat skills. Red-scaled lizardmen often excelled in close combat compared to the blue-scaled ones. His saber was also swiftly sliced, catching each incoming move flawlessly. In a flurry of wide swings and slashes, the saber targeted the opponent's vital areas. In an instant, the two were locked in fierce combat. Sword glimmers and saber shadows arose amidst rising dust. The spectators in the stands, however, were a bit bewildered. They had expected an explosive fight. Yet at the sight, the situation was unclear. Neither movements nor techniques were visible, only the myriad sword glimmers and saber shadows surrounding the two, creating rolling air waves and a cloud of dust. Who can see clearly, tell us what's happening. Liadazan wields the saber, the one in golden armor the longsword. And then they clashed. Dmitrija seized the moment. As he slashed with his sword, he kicked his opponent in the chest, simultaneously retreating to pull back. Liadazan, hit by the kick, flew backwards, unstable, slipping down. Dmitrija pointed a finger, releasing Heretic Mark. The next second, he instantly teleported in front of the reeling lizardman in red armor, slashing down with his longsword. Liadazan's pupils dilated. With a furious shout, a wild aura spread around, a heatwave distorting the air and forcibly knocking Dmitrija back. Missing the opportunity, Dmitrija did not rush to attack again. The two positioned on opposite sides, cautiously watching each other. Dmitrija breathed slightly hard. And Liadazan, with cold slit eyes, watched his opponent, his bright red tongue slipping from his thin lips to lick the blood that remained. The audience fell silent. No one shouted for Liadazan anymore, instead watching the two competitors with some gravitas. Although their movements were too fast to see clearly, the situation on the field was still evident. Clearly, the stranger in the golden armor was gaining the upper hand. It seemed Liadazan was also injured. The fight continued. Both players moved their feet cautiously, circling each other, gradually narrowing the distance. Both took a deep breath at the same time. Their chests began to bulge forward as one blue, one red, two energies surged up their necks. Chapter 939. The next second. Whoosh! Blue mist, exhaled from Dmitrija's mouth, spread rapidly throughout the arena. Almost simultaneously, Liadazan spat out a large breath of flame, covering the area in front of him. One blue, one red, the boundary was clear. But the red flames clearly did not last too long. When it stopped, the blue fog then covered the entire field. Liadazan realized that something was wrong, as the fog gradually weakened his perception. He even could no longer discern the direction. The next instant, a figure rushed towards him swiftly. Movements agile, not at all like those of a lizardman. Liadazan's eyes narrowed, a strong sense of crisis rising within him. Seizing the right moment, his long sword blazed with fierce fire, unleashing several strikes. But each slash only cut through the fog, missing the opponent, who had dodged the attack, and even after the sword wind dispersed some fog, there was no trace of the enemy to be seen. Before he could take another action, he suddenly saw a figure dart out from one side of the fog. Like a golden leopard, it leaped into the air. Bang! A muffled sound. The knee, wrapped in iron armor, struck directly into Liadazan's faceplate. The heavy force caused the helmet to emit a strained, warping sound. Liadazan's head was thrown back, and he staggered backwards. Knowing this was bad, he quickly tensed his muscles to steady his frame, preparing to counterattack. But in just that moment of lapse, the cold tip of the sword had already pressed against the gap in his armor, touching the scales on his neck. Clang! The long sword dropped to the ground, Liadazan somewhat dazed. He had truly lost, outmaneuvered in weapon combat, and outmatched in environmental tactics. I lost, Liadazan said in a deep voice. Dmitrija sheathed his longsword, picked up the opponent's longsword, and handed it back to him. It was just a sparring match. You, Liadazan, holding his weapon, didn't know what to say. Soon, the fog dissipated. The red and the golden figures stood their ground. But their weapons were already sheathed, with no intention of continuing the fight. The spectators in the stands, from the beginning to now, still wore confused expressions. What happened? Is it over? Who won? Yet, who won in the end? It should be Liatazan who won, right? Maybe it's the one in the golden armor, he had the advantage at the start. You could see an advantage? I didn't understand a thing the entire time. As the crowd speculated on who won and lost. The giant gong at the top was struck, draw. Damn, a draw? There are draws too. It just means neither could overcome the other, right? It makes sense, it's not a fight to the death, a draw is normal. To fight Liatazan to a draw, who is this guy? He's so fierce. Yeah, it's incredible, to draw with Liatazan. At the highest seats in the stands, many lizardmen officials showed expressions of surprise. Among them were many high-level lizardmen heroes who naturally could tell that Liatazan had sustained some injuries. Who was stronger and who was weaker was actually quite clear. This son of the ancient saint is very strong, his bloodline is very pure. Being able to slightly outperform Liatazan is indeed extraordinary. I don't know which clan he is from, but it would be great if he joined the royal dynasty. Hearing the discussions of the ministers behind her, the queen showed a satisfied smile. Others couldn't see what happened in the mist, but she, with her dark gold 9th tier, could see clearly. Dmitrija had indeed given her a surprise. Also, with the help of this duel, Dmitrija was now in plain sight of the officials and the public. All right, back to the royal palace. Yes. After dinner, Fang Hao soaked in the hot spring, browsing the World Channel. Buying blueprint for a blue one-handed sword, PM if interested. Selling beef curry and hand-pulled flatbread at fair prices, hurry and buy. Selling white steel chainmail blueprint, trade for same quality weapon blueprint. Curry runs right through you, whoever buys it is asking for it, don't ask me how I know. Selling blossoming everywhere skill scroll, trade for warrior skills or 20 blue weapons. At this, Fang Hao stopped the scrolling messages. Blossoming everywhere? A spell of the wood element? Such spells were indeed rare. Blossoming everywhere. Category, Air Elemental Skill Scroll. Chapter 940. Wow, Air Elemental Spell. What a misleading name. Blossoming everywhere. Category, Air Elemental Magic. Level, Tier 3 Magic. Effect, shoot a fixed direction thunder attribute orb, inflicting thunder attribute damage, difficult to control. Description, a white display of fireworks, dangerous and dazzling. In Fang Hao's understanding, thunder elemental magic is a type of air elemental magic. And this blossoming everywhere ability actually releases thunder elemental magic. As for what other types are included in air elemental, as of now, he doesn't know much about them. After all, he hasn't had detailed exposure to magical instruction. The only one who had undergone further study, Li Rong, was hastily sent to the front lines after just 2 days and hasn't returned yet. This skill scroll for sale is actually something that he needs. He opened private chat and sent over, can it be cheaper? There was a brief silence on the other side before the reply came, no, and you'll have to compete because someone else also wants to buy it from me. If you offer too little, it'll go to the other person. Hey? Someone else wants to buy the skill scroll? Are they also a thunder elemental mage? It's also possible they saw my name and are looking to sell at a high price, just like the others. After all, with just one item, there's no expectation of any future cooperation. Get as much equipment as you can. Fang Hao replied, since someone contacted you before me, sell it to them. There was silence again on the other side. Then the reply came, give me an offer, let me hear it. As expected, either the price offered by the other person is too low, or there isn't a second person at all. After thinking for a bit, Fang Hao said, 10 blue-grade weapons. That won't work, too little. You name it, I'll see if it's acceptable, Fang Hao replied. 20 weapons. The skill scroll, once learned, grants a permanent skill. And with thunder elemental magic, it deals high damage, strong power. 20 is a bargain for you. Then I don't want it. What's the highest you can offer? 15 pieces. 19 pieces. Only 15 blue-grade weapons, as blue-grade weapons in the market are already value-preserving, worth much more than your scroll. Fang Hao stuck to his offer of 15. It's not that he's being stingy with other transmigrators. Rather, as of now, blue-grade equipment truly has value-preserving qualities. On the World Channel, more transmigrators are supplying the military with equipment. And they are still stuck in the white and green equipment range. Once blue-grade equipment appears, it's quickly purchased by someone. Therefore, blue-grade weapons are more marketable than this mage skill scroll. Of course, skill scrolls are also valuable items. It's just that among transmigrators, those who choose the mage path, especially thunder magic, are very rare. There was another long silence from the other side before the final reply came. Fine, we are all transmigrators, I'll give you a discount, I've set up a designated trade. Damn it! We're just trading normally, why does it sound like you're at such a loss? Fang Hao immediately received the designated trade, the other party had listed the Blossoming Everywhere skill scroll for sale. On his side, he selected 15 blue-grade weapons that had been replaced by skeleton soldiers. He went ahead with the trade. In the next second, the skill scroll appeared in his hand. Skill scrolls differ from books. The books he'd bought before, like Secrets of the Multi-Headed Fire Python, required reading and then following the book's method to learn to concentrate the magic. But skill scrolls are specific skills for transmigrators. Like in games, confirmation allows you to learn them. Of course, you have to be a mage, warriors won't do. Do you want to learn the skill, Blossoming Everywhere? Learn. The scroll transformed into a light that shot into his body. At the same time, the pattern and steps of casting this spell emerged in Fang Hao's mind. Having learned a new skill, he wanted to try it out. But he can't try it here. Magic doesn't differentiate between friend and foe, if it hurt Ira and the rest, that wouldn't be good. After deciding, he stood up. Ira's and Little White's cheeks turned red. Seeing Fang Hao head towards the door, they asked, Master, are you going out? Yeah, I acquired a new skill and want to test it outside. Fang Hao walked out of the hot spring, shaking off the water on him. Little White also got up, took out a towel, and started to help Fang Hao dry the droplets off his body. Having dried the water off, he put on some simple clothes and walked out. He had just left the Lord's mansion, and saw Dimitrija in golden armor just happening to pass by in front of the mansion. He even carried a small backpack, seemingly having brought back some specialty goods from the lizardman. My lord, Dimitrija saluted. You're back? How was it today? Is there anything different over there compared to here? Fang Hao asked with a smile. Dimitrija had been invited to visit the lizardman's territory, and Fang Hao could guess the lizardman queen's intention. Poaching, it's not the first time. With 100 points of loyalty, he wasn't worried. The queen was very welcoming. The city isn't much different from a human city, only the environment is a bit distinct, Dimitrija answered. Well, I'll also visit the holy nation when I get a chance. Dimitrija, seeing Fang Hao carrying the Thunderhawk blade and walking out, asked curiously, My lord, are you heading out? The Thunderhawk blade, as Fang Hao's weapon for air elemental magic, is only brought out during battle. Right now, the territory is quiet, with no sign of anyone attacking. Why would he be taking his weapon? Fang Hao looked at the giant sword in his hand. Oh, I just got a new air elemental skill, planning to find a place to test it out. Chapter 941. Then I'll accompany you, she offered. All right, let's head to the testing range. The two of them set out for the testing range, one leading and the other following. In the past, the testing range had been used for firing practice. The area was large, and many humanoid wooden targets were stored in the warehouse. But recently, it had become the place where Fang Hao tested new skills and experimented with odd items. The testing of firearms was carried out in Grey Iron City. With demon teleportation available, distance was no longer an issue. He called over 2 skeletons. Go and replace a few of the old targets. The expressionless skeletons went forward and swapped out the worn targets for new ones. Fang Hao seized the moment to gather his strength. He released Blossoming Everywhere. Since he was still unclear about the skill's characteristics, he threw it a bit farther for safety. A thunderbolt coiled around it. A basketball-sized thunderball was hurled by Fang Hao. The speed was not fast, and it took about 4 or 5 seconds before it hit the wooden target at the center of the range. Bang! The wooden target shattered amidst the thunder, and the next second, the basketball-sized thunderball burst into countless pool ball-sized smaller thunderballs, spreading outwards. The pool ball-sized thunderballs flew about a meter before they too fragmented, turning into thunder snakes and spreading further. It was like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. Ah, this! Fang Hao, having little knowledge, was surprised. Blossoming Everywhere was indeed a fitting name. This skill was a 3-stage chain skill. A large thunderball dispersing into smaller thunderballs, which then broke into electric snakes continuing to spread. If used well, this skill could be a powerful group damage skill. But one had to be cautious about the extent of effects since the spread pattern of this skill was not easy to control. If it was used in small spaces, or in places with many allies, this skill might kill both foes and friends alike. His gaze returned to the wooden target up front. The initially attacked target was already shattered by the thunderball, and the targets on either side, each about a meter away, had not been spared either. The spread smaller thunderballs turned them into fragments. The damage effect was quite good, and the biggest characteristic of thunder elemental magic was the electrocution effect upon hitting. Even if it didn't kill you, it would paralyze you from the shock, causing full body paralysis. Go, replace the targets. The skeletons went to bring out new targets and replaced the 3 that were damaged. Once they finished replacing them, Fang Hao continued to release Blossoming Everywhere again, and the thunderball flew out. It still hit the wooden target and spread into smaller thunderballs, which then fragmented into vanishing thunder snakes. Roughly calculating, the first split could spread to about a meter radius from the center. The pool ball-sized spread of thunder snakes could cover about half a meter, and after that, maybe. The range was fairly decent. Fang Hao further experimented by smashing the thunderball directly onto the ground. The basketball-sized thunderball, instead of progressing to the second phase of spreading, directly turned into a myriad of thunder snakes, covering an area of more than 3 meters. Then, he threw the thunderball into the water. The thunderball disappeared, but the electric snakes still spread, reaching a much wider area than when smashed on the ground. After several more trials, he felt he was also becoming familiar with the way and effects of the skill. Only then did he and Dimitrija head back. This skill, he felt quite satisfied, was worth exchanging for 15 blue weapons. Back at the mansion, he talked for a while in the hall with Dimitrija. He looked at the lizardman specialties that he had brought back. Then he went upstairs, took Ira in his arms, and went to sleep. The night was deep. The air was pervaded by a muggy humidity. It felt almost like fog, making the surroundings even more blurred and quiet. Clop clop clop. The dense sound of horse hooves and the noise of wagon wheels rolling over pebbles shattered the night's quiet. A carriage equipped with nightstones sped down the shadowy road at a fast pace. The road was rugged, causing the wagon to jolt violently. Inside the carriage, a brown-haired man looked at the Book of Lords and occasionally urged the soldiers to accelerate even more. The night outside was dangerous. If it hadn't been for the importance of this matter, he would not have opted to leave the city under the cover of night. How much longer? The brown-haired man tapped on the carriage wall and asked. Sir, you can start to see the building ahead, the guard serving as the coachman responded. The man felt elated, pulled back the curtain, and looked forward to the building ahead. In front of the fog, faint lights from a building emerged dimly. A moment later, the carriage drew near the city limits. 5 pseudo-dragon guards began encircling above, hovering around the carriage. At that moment, a guard riding a winged dragon also flew over the carriage. Clad in silver armor, holding a long spear. Stop the carriage, state your purpose, the guard atop the winged dragon demanded coldly. The carriage slowed down. A brown-haired man, leaning out from the carriage, squeezed out a smile and began to explain, I'm a member of Lord Aragon's alliance, and I have important matters to report to him. The guard glanced at the carriage, noting there were only 2 people including the coachman, posing no apparent danger. He then said, approach the city wall and wait, I'll go and notify. All right, all right. The winged dragon rider took off again, flying directly over the city wall into the city. Before long, the city gates opened. The brown-haired man was ushered inside. Inside the lord's mansion, Aragon, a handsome blonde, yawned as he sat in a chair to one side. Clearly, he had been woken from his sleep. Aragon glanced at the man who entered and said, what is it that couldn't wait until morning? Without even sitting down, the man immediately said, Hierarch, the air elemental scroll you entrusted to me last time has been sold. Sold? Aragon furrowed his brows. Yes, a Chinese man, male, a thunder elemental mage, wealthy, with 15 blue weapons, fitting the criteria you were looking for, the man reported. Oh? Who is this person? Have you kept in touch with him? This person, is a bit special, the man hesitated and continued, the scroll was bought by Fang Hao, who ranks first. I cannot confirm if he is the person you are looking for. Aragon's eyes widened, instantly waking up. Fang Hao? How did my bait catch him? After the last investigation with the lizardman ended in vain, any leads on Fu Lei had been lost. All information couldn't be connected. Wadey had provided the name Fu Lei, allied with the lizardman camp. The dragon clan then went to the southern lands lizardmen and the northern lands lizardmen forces. Neither side had this transmigrator. Especially the northern lands lizardmen, the transmigrator was not of Asian descent, so there couldn't be a person named Fu Lei. After several days with no leads, Aragon discussed a strategy with the dragon clan. The target was Chinese, skilled in thunder elemental magic. So they procured a thunder elemental skills scroll and sold it in the channel. This scroll had actually started selling 2 days ago, and there were many interested buyers, but they were just filtering through the candidates. Those intending to buy were dismissed for various reasons. Only today, they finally targeted Fang Hao. Apart from his name not fitting, all other conditions were met. Chinese, thunder elemental, reportedly, his camp held undead. This remarkably pointed to him. Aragon frowned, pondered for a while, and continued, did he say whether it was for his own use or for someone else? After completing the transaction, I tried contacting him, but he did not respond to me. It seems he's not keen on communicating with others, the man answered. Once the transaction was complete, they automatically became friends. For a period of time, private messages would not be blocked. The man, having traded with Fang Hao, attempted to contact him to gather more intelligence. But it seemed Fang Hao was uninterested in engaging, having exhausted his public chat quota and not responding. Feeling the significance of this matter, it presented another opportunity for distinction. He rushed to Aragon's place in the middle of the night. Aragon, after pondering a while, reconsidered everything from the beginning. Then said, stay here for now, tomorrow I'll take you to meet the dragon clan. Oh, all right. The next day, early morning. In the spacious hall, Aragon and the brown-haired man sat on chairs to one side. Opposite them sat the silver-haired dragon lady, Beata. After Aragon had recounted the matter, he said, Ms. Beata, now we just need to confirm if Fang Hao's appearance matches the person we met, then we can confirm his identity. Beata nodded, quite satisfied with Aragon's approach. Everyone hopes to have a smart subordinate. Beata asked, how do we confirm the appearance? We can look for clues from other transmigrators. Chapter 942. Other transmigrators? Beata frowned and took a big gulp of the wine. Being part of the younger generation of the dragon clan, she had a stronger receptiveness to new things. She had a fairly good understanding of the matters regarding transmigrators. Aragon was someone she had supported, and now he played a significant role in the development of the dragon clan. At the mention of Aragon, Beata let out a gentle burp from the wine. She asked curiously, how can you look for clues with other people when you don't even know the location of this number 1 territory? Aragon continued, the location doesn't matter. As long as someone has seen Fang Hao, we can definitely find a breakthrough. It's easier to find a breakthrough among transmigrators. Oh, you mean to bribe Fang Hao's subordinates, to confirm if he's the one we're looking for, right? Beata seemed to understand. Yes, Fang Hao must also have his own transmigrator alliance, and some members must have seen Fang Hao in person. As long as we find a breakthrough and confirm his appearance, it shouldn't be difficult. Maybe we could even find a picture of him, and then we will know if he is that Fu Lei at a glance, Aragon said. Transmigrators were never a monolith. Betraying companions or the alliance for their own better survival wasn't an uncommon occurrence. Fang Hao's alliance must have a significant number of members. It would be easier to find a breakthrough point then. As long as we confirm the person's appearance, we can determine if they're the one the dragon clan is looking for. Moreover, Aragon was even more eager in his heart that Fang Hao was that Fu Lei. If the dragon clan were to eliminate Fang Hao, kill him, or capture his cities, he would naturally become the number 1 in the world. By then, resources and population would gravitate more towards him, allowing his own territory to develop better and faster. He even schemed in his heart that even if Fang Hao was not that person, he had to make sure Fang Hao was. He must make the dragon clan point their spears at Fang Hao. Beata nodded, feeling that this was a good idea, and said, all right, you investigate this matter. Report any intelligence directly to me. She took another large gulp of wine, Don't go looking for trouble with that man yourself, you're no match for him. Aragon nodded, understood, Ms. Beata. Then, he glanced at the wine in Beata's hand, sensing an opportunity to curry favor. He asked softly, Ms. Beata, do you like wine? I know a few wine-making techniques. If you'd like, I can brew some for you to taste and see if it suits your palate. Beata's eyes lit up. You can brew wine? A bit, he replied. Good, brew some for me, something strong, Beata ordered. She was getting more and more satisfied with this human she had nurtured. He always managed to find what pleased her without being told. Aragon also smiled, all right, once it's ready, I'll bring it over for you to taste. Beata nodded, okay, you can go back now. Push on with the investigation, the Dragon Clan is also tallying the clan members everywhere to confirm who that kid has killed. I shall take my leave, Ms. Beata, Aragon said as he stood up and bowed. Go, she replied. Time flows like water, and the years fly by like a shuttle. The days when you can't show off pass in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, several days have passed. In these few days, Furious Lion City hasn't responded to the negotiations, and Fang Hao is willing to keep dragging the situation out. Between the two cities, messages were continuously exchanged. They accused each other, engaging in a war of words. The Lizardman Queen ordered some armors from Fang Hao's side again and invited Dmitrija for a visit. It made Fang Hao feel that this queen was being rather too obvious in her actions. Who would invite someone for a visit every other day? He criticized inwardly but didn't stop Dmitrija from interacting with the Lizardman. Normally when he didn't plan to leave the city, he would allow Dmitrija to mingle there. Whether Dmitrija and the queen could end up together depended on their fate. The war at the Great Cemetery of Odis was still ongoing. The army advanced through the Great Cemetery's central region with the momentum of a crushing force. According to the news from Dongjiayu, since the march began, it was mostly the bone dragon and aerial ships clearing the path ahead. By the time the rear army arrived, the sites had been turned into ruins. The transmigrators like them needed to direct the skeletons to dig out the treasure chests from the rubble. After that, they would rush to catch up with the advancing troops. The entire assault was more like a forced march, stirring up clouds of dust all the way. On this day, the morning sunlight was still bright and sunny. After breakfast, Fang Hao lay on a rocking chair, took out the newly exchanged sheets of paper, and read the latest content from a novel. The updates were quite fast, 5 pages of content a day, quite an efficient rate. After he finished reading, he passed it to Ira, and once Ira was finished, Little White took it and read it to Angia. The whole family, complete and harmonious, was immersed in the novel. Under the oak tree, they enjoyed this peaceful moment. Having read the last page, he passed it to Ira. He exchanged it for 2 green weapons with the author as encouragement. At the same time hinting for the author to update more often. Ding! Suddenly, the private chat notification sounded. He opened it and saw that it was a message from Dongjiayu. Brother Hao, the army has reached the Undead's Blackhorn City, and Queen Amanda has already ordered to prepare the troops for the final battle. Fang Hao's brows furrowed slightly. Counting the days, nearly half a month had passed since the battle had started. Chapter 943. But the speed at which the army was advancing directly toward the Undead main city was somewhat surprising. This fast? Fang Hao replied. Dong Jiaeo quickly responded, ugh, don't even mention it. Ever since the war started, the entire army hasn't stopped moving. Transmigrators have been living and eating on carriages, and several of them have gotten carsick. Well, no wonder, when making preparations before the war began, Queen Amanda had requested that all of the army's species be undead. These transmigrators were also placed there at his request, to deliver messages and handle logistics and crafting. It was only an undead army that could march in this manner. For any other species, this journey would take at least 2 to 3 months, or even longer. But the effect was significant. It hardly gave Odis any time to react. They had marched right to the city, and the final battle now seemed imminent. You've worked hard. Is there anything I need to do on my end? Fang Hao continued to ask. Dong Jiae replied, we need a large amount of artillery ammunition over here, and Queen Amanda is asking if there is anything we should pay attention to after breaching the city. Things to pay attention to? There wasn't really anything to watch out for. After thinking about it, he said, if there's a library or something, make sure not to destroy it. If not, then let Amanda decide herself. I don't have any particular demands on my end. Okay, understood. Ending the chat, Fang Hao also got up and walked outside. Ira and her companions were still engrossed in their novels, not even glancing his way. He stepped out of the Lord's mansion and headed toward the open space in the warehouse district. He began making ammunition. Feeling it rather dangerous, Fang Hao batch produced 50,500 pieces each of cannonballs and organ gun shells. He didn't dare let these stay in the city too long. After coming out, he immediately traded them to Dong Jiayu. This amount of ammunition was enough to turn Blackhorn City into ruins. But since Amanda planned to rebuild Anglina Kingdom, she likely wouldn't bombard the city into destruction. If the main city were turned into ruins, rebuilding would be a difficult task. It was now up to Amanda to decide for herself. The great cemetery of Odis had already been turned by Odis into something resembling purgatory. It couldn't get any worse than it already was. After completing the trades, Fang Hao also produced some detonators and items like siege ladders. Since he had a hundredfold amplification, his crafting was more efficient. It was a way to lighten the load of the transmigrators over there. After advising Dong Jiayu on safety and mentioning that the transmigrators didn't need to approach the front lines, he ended the chat. The Great Cemetery of Odis. Outside Blackhorn City. The Whitebone Army, arranged in neat and orderly squares. Endless at a glance. Flags with a black base and a red bat wing fluttered in the wind. Among the gaps in the formations, bound spirit guardians swiftly moved through the troops. With red paint in their hands, they left a red mark on each of their own soldiers, to better distinguish between allied and enemy undead. To the left and right of the Whitebone Army's formation, skeleton blacksmiths stepped on the ribs of bone dragons, checking to ensure their armor was secure. In the rear, aerial ships lowered rope ladders, and skeleton soldiers carried ammo boxes, delivering the ammunition into the ship's holds. In the center of the formation, transmigrators finally had the chance to step down from the carriages. They moved their limbs around, like patients undergoing rehabilitation training. These old arms and legs of mine, it's not about fighting. It feels more like a group tour: sleep on the bus and get off to urinate. I'd prefer not getting off the bus. We were tasked with clearing the rubble, moving stones, and digging out equipment. Exhausting as hell. Give me a break. Who knows how many are itching to get off and do some work, but can't get a spot. I envy those who get to get off. I feel like I'm going to get a thrombosis. With the paper in her hands, Dong Jiayu waited for everyone to finish stretching and moving around. He spoke up, "All right, this is it, the last battle. Once it's over, we can all take our rewards and go home." Everyone chuckled. After enduring for nearly half a month, the end was finally in sight. The prospect of rewards after the great battle was still highly anticipated. Last time, the transmigrators who assisted in attacking Grey Iron City not only each received a cannon as a reward, but also gained a certain command over skeleton soldiers. These things neither eat nor drink, and they work tirelessly. It's simply the most perfect type of soldier. And then there were the bone dragons. Throughout this journey, the most impressive forces seemed to be the bone dragons. If one could be rewarded with a bone dragon, they would definitely be among the regional powerhouses. Seeing Dong Jiayu speak up, the others quieted down. Standing by, waiting for their tasks to be assigned. Dong Jiayu continued, "Shao Xing, you take 10 people and construct the defense wall and watchtowers according to the blueprint. Time is of the essence, so don't slack off." Shao Xing nodded, "All right, Jiayu." Taking the blueprint, he chose 5 people he was familiar with. "You 5, build the houses as planned. The rest of you, create various siege weapons according to the item list. Everyone, work swiftly, let's not hold back the army's progress." "Yes, Jiayu." Everyone sprang into action, beginning their tasks according to the plan. Their work wasn't technical, they just had to use their transmigrator abilities to make things. Right after the tasks were delegated, a bound spirit guardian hurried over. "Commander Dong Jiayu, Queen Amanda has requested your presence." "All right." Dong Jiayu mounted her horse and rode off toward the area where Amanda was located. In the procession, within a carriage with a slender body, Rollina lay in a black, red velvet-lined coffin for reposing. Her long, straight legs, clad in black stockings, were crossed and resting on the edge of the coffin. She held a sound-transmitting shell in her hand, speaking with a hint of complaint. "Don't even mention it. I've not fought a single battle along the way, just been on the road all the time. The feebleness of Odie's army had also surpassed Rolina's expectations. She had expected a few confrontations, at least. But now, it seemed like nothing at all. They just breezed through the entire way. She had been sleeping the whole journey. Soon, a soft voice from a woman came through the sound-transmitting shell. The final battle is about to begin. Be very careful, this is no laughing matter. Hearing this voice, Rolina's expression softened considerably, and a smile appeared. Don't worry, I'm so powerful, there's no danger. Even if a real battle starts, Odie wouldn't stand a chance against me. Even so, there's no need for you to get involved with so many forces there. The voice on the other end grew serious. Rolina's smile brightened, feeling cared for and considered was truly wonderful. Her smile moderated as she responded, I know, you care about me the most. The day before yesterday, Fang Hao came by. He mentioned you, clearly concerned, but you know how men are, they're not good at saying these things. Rolina paused. A brief doubt crossed her mind. Why was she being steered towards Fang Hao again? She furrowed her brows, curiously responding, what's going on with you? Lately, all you talk about is Fang Hao, Fang Hao. Has he bribed you to speak well of him to me? Let me tell you, men will only use you, not one of them is good. The person on the other end continued to respond, Fang Hao's not bad, actually. He's been quite good to us. If it weren't for him, my position as city lord would have been usurped. Rolina emphasized again, don't be fooled by his facade. Isn't he just after expanding his territory? It's not solely for you. Remember, no man is good. Say it with me, no man is good. You say that, but you don't seem to dislike him, came the reply. Rolina's face changed, just as she was about to retort. There was a faint knock on the door of the carriage. Then a voice called out, Lady Rolina, Queen Amanda requests that you meet with an envoy. Rolina's eyebrows knitted together. An envoy? What envoy? She sat up, asking, what envoy? The reply came from outside the carriage, an envoy from Blackhorn City has come for negotiations. Queen Amanda's intention is for you to meet with this envoy in your capacity as a member of the Blood Clan. Chapter 944. Meet with them as a member of the Blood Clan? When forces clash, it's common to arrange for envoys to negotiate. But now that the troops are already at the gates, we're just one step away, what is there left to negotiate? Why not just fight it out? Putting on a coat, Rolina continued to ask, will Amanda not meet them herself? This time, the attack on Odie is also in the name of the Blood Clan. In essence, it is Amanda's war of restoration, which has little to do with Rolina herself. Throughout the journey, she didn't manage anything, and slept until now. Now they want her to meet the people opposite, but she doesn't know how to handle it. Outside the carriage, she continued, Queen Amanda said, she wants you to take charge. All right, I know now, said Rolina, nodding. She opened the carriage door and saw the bound spirit guardians waiting outside. She glanced at the endless army of white bones surrounding her. Spreading her bat wings, she flew toward the central area, to see that envoy as well, but first she'd have to inquire about Amanda's intentions. Lest she accidentally ruin some plan. Soon after, Rolina unfolded her wings and flew in another direction. There, a stone structure had been erected, serving as a temporary reception area. Landing beside the building, she saw Dong Jiayu already waiting nearby. Rolina asked, where's that envoy? Dong Jiayu said, he hasn't arrived yet but should be here soon. Let's go inside and wait. The two then entered the building. The interior was sparsely furnished. A long table and a few chairs. A piece of nightstone hung overhead. The whole room served as a temporary place for discussing military tactics. It would be useful for a few days, and after the war ended, it wouldn't be needed anymore, no need for any special decorations either. The two sat down on the chairs. Soon, footsteps were heard outside the door. Following that, the bound spirit guardians announced, My lord, the emissary from Blackhorn City has arrived. Let him in. The door opened. Two figures, one short and one tall, walked in. Both were undead skeletons. The one in front was short, with a skull broad at the top and narrow at the bottom, clearly showing goblin features. Dressed in a black base outfit with red embroidery, his neck bone and finger bones adorned with gold necklaces and rings. The other undead followed behind, from the bone structure and height, he was evidently a human turned into an undead skeleton. From the positioning of the two undead, it was clear that the shorter undead was in charge, with the human undead as his companion. Rollina and her companion sized them up, and the two undead did the same. They hadn't expected to be received not by the Blood Clan leader, the Red Duke, but by two young women. So young. Their eyes swept over each other. The short undead was the first to greet them, saying, "I've met the two young ladies. I'm an official sent by the King of Odis, named Glover. I wonder if I could meet with Lord Red Duke. We are old acquaintances." You could tell that the goblin undead was adept at building relationships. His behavior was both polite and he mentioned past relations. In the dynamics of regional power, humans and dwarfs were strategic allies, while undead and the Blood Clan were closer. Although it had been a long time, they hadn't contacted each other for many years. Of course, for Undead and Blood Clan, time wasn't an issue. It only made their relationship sound even closer. Dong Jiayu didn't show any reaction, she didn't understand much about the matters of Crescent Heights. But Rollina, upon hearing the undead's words, her eyes instantly turned icy, and she emitted an almost tangible aura of killing intent. What seemed like a perfect opening remark. Suddenly the atmosphere in the room felt different. Even the two undead, who had lost their sensory nerves, now felt a chill that seeped into their souls. The short undead Glover immediately explained, "We mean no harm, we come with sincerity." "What's going on? I didn't do anything just now, but why does it feel like they want to kill me now?" Rollina, looking directly at them, asked, "Are you close with the Red Duke?" Glover immediately responded, "Very close. I was in charge of trade between the Great Cemetery and Crescent Heights, and the last interaction involved arranging for Blackhorn City's finest blacksmith to craft a huge silver coffin for him. You could say that I read." Poof! A crisp, cracking sound abruptly ended Glover's words. All eyes turned in surprise to see a dark red energy spear piercing through the small undead's skull. The soul fire in his pupils flickered in struggle, then quickly extinguished. The body, dressed in luxurious robes, also instantly collapsed into a pile of bones. "Throw it out," Rollina said coldly. Dong Jiayu glanced around the room and finding no one else, bent down to search through the scattered bones. She found a small bag of gold coins, keys, a gold necklace, a gemstone ring, and a finely made soft armor, a piece of purple equipment that was worn under the jacket. However, the soft armor was too small, suitable only for a goblin. Having gathered the items on the long table, the bones were collected and tossed out the window, like disposing of a pile of trash. The other human undead, with its soul fire trembling violently, felt shock, fear, and confusion. What's happening? Glover had just started to ingratiate himself when he was killed. And, I didn't even see where that dark red energy spear came from that shattered Glover's skull. Chapter 945. You know the Red Duke too? Rollina's icy gaze fell upon him. The human undead immediately shook his head, "No, I don't know him. I was just transformed a few years ago." Rollina nodded, her long legs clad in black stockings crossed as she leaned back in the chair and continued, "Odis sent you to negotiate, I assume? If you have something to say, speak quickly." The human undead glanced at the opened window. Knowing he didn't want to die, he had to be careful with his words. He was only there to record, but the real negotiator, Glover, had already been discarded out the window like trash. Now, he had to continue the negotiations. King Odis has always maintained a good relationship with the Blood Clan, and hopes to preserve this peaceful and cooperative relationship. Is that all? The king says the Blood Clan can set forth any conditions it wishes, hoping everyone can resolve the issues peacefully, the undead continued. Let Odis relinquish Blackhorn City, open the gates and surrender. Could he agree to that? Rollina asked directly. The undead was speechless, that was not the kind of condition he had in mind. He immediately responded, that might be difficult. The king promises that as long as the Blood Clan withdraws its army and maintains peace on the border, the Great Cemetery is willing to offer 30 million gold coins over 5 years to aid the development of Crescent Heights. Although meant as development aid, it essentially represented reparations for withdrawing troops. But their reason for attacking the Great Cemetery was not for reparations. It was to restore Amanda to power. So, the only possibility for negotiation was if Odis voluntarily relinquished Blackhorn City, otherwise, the troops would not withdraw. Rollina looked at him as before, her tone still even, unless Otis relinquishes the throne, this war will continue. In his urgency, the undead blurted out again, actually, the amount of support can still be discussed. The undead and the Blood Clan have always been close, how can we allow ourselves to weaken and give humans a chance to counterattack? You've seen our military strength. This battle, your Blackhorn City definitely can't hold, and if you don't want to go down with Otis, find yourself a way out, or else you are truly headed for death, Rollina said coldly. The undead's soul fire trembled again. When coming here, he had seen the formidable military strength of the Blood Clan. The number of troops was simply too overwhelming. It was hard to imagine how many people had to be killed to amass such a host of undead. This time, Blackhorn City was really in danger. Could you let me speak with the Red Duke? The human undead carefully ventured. Hey! As soon as he finished speaking, Rollina's aura intensified again. The murderous intent enveloped the undead like viscous blood. The skeleton of the undead shuddered. He immediately closed his mouth and said no more. Leave, relay my exact words to Otis, Rollina said coldly. Oh, all right. The undead got up in a panic, toppling the chair behind him. Fearing that any slow movement might result in his skull being pierced by her, he hastily bowed and walked straight out the door. Dong Jiayu didn't expect the negotiation to be over so quickly. One was killed as soon as they entered. The other merely spoke 3 or 4 sentences before the discussion ended. Rollina stood up, saying casually, that's it then, relay this to Amanda and Fang Hao later. Oh, all right. Dong Jiayu nodded. Rollina opened the door, spread her bat wings, and flew toward her carriage. Dong Jiayu also came out, mounted her horse, and headed towards Amanda's location. An hour later, the human skeleton finally returned to Blackhorn City amid fear and trepidation. Ignoring the inquiries from the officials beside him, he directly raced towards the royal palace. Inside the royal palace, Otis sat on the white bone throne, with an assembly of undead officials from Blackhorn City below him. At that moment, all the undead's gazes were fixed on the figure in the center, hoping that he might bring some good news. It was then that Otis' cold voice sounded, "Why have only you returned?" The newly returned undead knelt in the center of the hall. Not daring to delay, he immediately replied, "My king, Glover was killed, they only let me return." Hey? Glover is dead? All the undead were shocked. Glover was a very astute goblin undead, how could he die during a negotiation? It was rare for a power to execute a negotiator. But everyone also realized something. It seemed that this negotiation wasn't ideal. As the undead officials quietly discussed among themselves, Otis spoke again, "Did the Red Duke kill him?" The kneeling undead immediately shook his head, stating, "We didn't see the Red Duke, we met a female of the Blood Clan and a transmigrator. Glover claimed to have good relations with the Red Duke and then he was killed." What? Killed after the first sentence? What's that woman's name? What's her relation to the Red Duke? Otis asked again. The undead shook his head again, "I don't know. That woman did not seem intent on negotiating and didn't reveal her identity to me." Otis' soul fire showed slight fluctuations. After a pause, he continued, "Put aside Glover's killing for now. What did she say about the proposal we offered?" Although he already had a guess, he couldn't help asking. Perhaps there was still a chance. The kneeling undead, head bowed, began, "I relayed all the suggestions you, my king, had proposed to her, but that woman didn't accept them. Instead, she said if we want a ceasefire, it would only be possible if. Chapter 946. Unless what? Unless you surrender and willingly hand over Blackhorn City." Bang! Otis smashed the armrest of the throne with his fist, breaking it into 2 pieces. Since becoming an undead, he had never felt such rage before. Even though his emotions were barely existent. Someone! Click, click. 2 white bone guards walked in. Otis said coldly, "Take him out and extinguish his soul." "My king, King Otis, it wasn't me who said it, it was that woman who said it, my king." The kneeling undead loudly objected. Being merely a messenger, he didn't understand why the anger was directed at him. Seeing Otis unmoved, and with no officials pleading on his behalf, he knew he was doomed to die. He stopped pleading and roared loudly, "That woman also said something else. Release him!" Otis ordered. The undead, already dragged to the doorway, had his arms released. The undead stood up, his gaze sweeping over the people once again. "What else did the woman say?" asked Odis. The undead, looking directly at Odis and then at everyone present, said, "That woman said her army would definitely conquer the city, and those who don't want to die with Odis should seek a way out sooner." Bang! No sooner had he finished speaking than Odis leapt up. Like a lion hunting prey, he crossed the great hall and pounced on the undead at the doorway. Bang! A slap came down, instantly crushing the undead's skull, and the soul fire rapidly extinguished. Odis' cruelty and ferocity made all the undead present tense. At that moment, a wrong word or deed could also provoke Odis' wrath. They had already acquired immortal lives. Did they really want to die here with him? Utter silence filled the room. Only the sound of Odis walking back echoed through the hall. When Odis returned to his throne, which now bore cracks, and sat down, he finally spoke, "All city prepare for battle. From today, any official who tries to leave Blackhorn City on their own will be directly exterminated." All the undead's hearts tightened again. Odis was binding everyone together. To die together. Yes. Nobody dared have any other thoughts, and they could only respectfully agree. Blackhorn City, Viscera Museum. Accompanied by his trusted aide, Odis walked straight into the museum. The busy priests paused their work and bowed deeply to Odis. Soon, 3 robe-clad, staff-holding corpse witches descended from the second floor. The one at the front, clad in a grey robe with golden embroidery, was none other than the corpse witch Yarlan, who had negotiated with the Federation. "King Odis," the corpse witches greeted. Odis nodded and said to the others, "Go back to your tasks." The 2 other corpse witches, along with the priests, left. The 2 stood outside the museum, stopping at the doorway. Odis then asked, "Yarlan, Blackhorn City is surrounded by the Blood Clan's army. This is our last chance. Do you have any solutions?" Leaning on his staff, Yarlan gazed towards the city center, where half of the Queen's gold tower had been shorn away. Indeed, the kingdom of Anglina was no more, and now this city was at its end as well. After a moment of thought, he said softly, "Are you sure the enemy is the Blood Clan? Do they have the capabilities to gather such a vast number of undead troops?" Chapter 947. After the gold-eating Queen Amanda suddenly disappeared, a huge change occurred in the once kingdom of Anglina. Odis, previously a stationed general, overthrew the royal family within the city and placed himself upon the throne. He became the new king. The Queen's gold towers were toppled, and the old ministers were replaced one by one. Soon after, the kingdom was renamed the Great Cemetery of Odis, and the royal city transformed into Blackhorn City. Various taxes emerged, turning the former kingdom into a complete undead graveyard. The country also lost everything it once had. When Odis realized he had ruined the kingdom himself, he began to seek new ways to fill the void within his domain. After much thought, he planned a war against the Human Federation. Sadly, the war carefully planned by Odis and his supporters became a stepping stone for others, allowing the Blood Clan to take advantage of the situation. With swift combat, they crossed the borders and approached Blackhorn City. The Blood Clan controlled the undead using rotten corpses. Thus, the enormous number of skeletons made it hard to believe that the real enemy behind this wasn't the Blood Clan. But at this point, whoever was behind it no longer mattered. Even knowing who it was wouldn't solve the assault on Blackhorn City. Whether the enemy is the Blood Clan or not doesn't matter anymore, what's important now is whether we can survive today, Odis said. The corpse witch Jarl shook his head, "Your Majesty, I can't change anything about this situation, nor can I offer any advice to you." "Humph. You always act this way, as if I killed Amanda," Odis spoke angrily. "Fine, if you don't want to talk then let's leave it, and if we can't defend the city, then we'll die together. The Blood Clan won't spare me, do you think they will spare you?" Jarl remained silent, standing still. Odis shouted angrily, "Fine, summon the guards, secure the museum, and execute anyone who dares to step outside." "Yes." A squad of skeleton guards surrounded the Viscera Museum. Odis stormed off angrily while Jarl silently walked back into the museum. Dusk. Blood Clan Army's war room. Nightstones hanging from above cast a soft light, illuminating the table below. The room's doors opened continuously. Heroes entered one after another. Everyone gathered around the table, waiting for the final briefing. When everyone had arrived, Amanda tapped the table lightly to direct everyone's focus onto it. The next second, Amanda gestured with her hand. A golden liquid flowed out from a necklace around her neck. On the surface of the table, it formed a three-dimensional fortress city. Amanda began, Blackhorn City, a level 15 fortress, each side of the city walls equipped with both arrow towers and magic towers, one side has 8 arrow towers and 4 magic towers. As she spoke, the golden model of the city started to change, showing the respective number of arrow towers and magic towers on the city walls. This method of briefing a battle plan was new to everyone. They listened intently with a sense of amazement. Amanda continued, the forces will be divided into 3 and will attack from the north, west, and east. The three-dimensional map on the table altered once more. Golden soldiers moved from the north, west, and east in a concave formation toward the city. Wyverns and aerial ships also joined the battlefield progressively as she described. Amanda detailed extensively. The 3D model actively evolved. The timing for the bone dragons to enter, the role of the skeleton vultures, and when to involve the aerial ships were all laid out. Even those unfamiliar with tactics could grasp the battle plans clearly. As time went by, the briefing came to an end. Once all the plans were completed. Amanda, why leave the southern city gate unguarded, what if they escape? Meatfist eventually asked. Amanda calmly responded, give them a chance to escape, and at the same time, it serves as a lesson for the Federation that small tricks should not be played lightly. A cornered enemy will unite and fight desperately. But giving them hope will cause chaos within the city. Odis would have to guard not only against the outside but also be wary of the inside. Similarly, the south leads directly to the Human Federation. Once they flee through the southern gate, they must continue south or else, with the Blood Clan's enormous army, it would be easy to capture them if they went in any other direction. The fleeing forces would again rush towards the border. This would be enough to scare those cunning individuals in the Federation. Also serving as a lesson for their scheming. Amanda didn't elaborate too much, only mentioning that she wanted to teach the Federation a lesson. Meatfist scratched his skull, oh, I see. When everyone had no further questions about the battle, Amanda nodded her head and gently clapped her hands, remember, after breaching the walls, kill the resistors, spare the surrendering and the innocents. Yes. Good, everyone return to your respective units, and prepare for the siege when night falls deep, Amanda said gravely. The attendees nodded and left the room. The night slowly descended. Clouds obscured the moon and stars. The entire land seemed submerged in ink, pitch black and unseen. The only sounds were the dense footsteps and the grinding noise of bones rubbing together. Chapter 948. The vision of the undead wasn't through fleshly eyes, and the Blood Clan, at night, could see even more clearly. Only the transmigrators accompanying the army had to grope in the dark as they followed the military operations. Nervous. 3 transmigrators assigned to West City huddled together and whispered. Seeing that the debate between the two was heating up, the 3rd transmigrator felt a bit helpless. These two were taking it too seriously, turning a chat into a quarrel. Fearing that they might come to blows during this sensitive time, he changed the subject. Have you heard? There are foreigners buying Fang Hao's photos, a clear picture can be exchanged for a green blueprint. Sure enough, as soon as these words came out, their argument stopped abruptly, and they immediately looked at him. Buy photos for what? Not sure, maybe they're fans. After all, Aragon, the runner-up, often appears on the channel to recruit Alliance members. Many girls in our country are his fans, he said. Well now, even in this world, we have the whole fan and idol thing. Who knows? I don't think so. Could it be those foreigners can curse someone or something? I've seen in movies, those foreigners burning photos to cast spells. How do you burn a photo from the Book of Lords? As the 3 were squatting on the ground, chatting animatedly with each other, a bound spirit guardian approached from behind. A Seti has commanded you to make some hemp rope, come on over quickly. The 3 immediately stood up and followed the bound spirit guardian towards the back. The deep of the night grew ever more intense. To the north, the central military area. My queen, it's almost midnight, Dong Jiao approached Amanda's carriage and reminded in a soft voice. Sitting in the carriage, Amanda looked up at the pitch-black sky. She said solemnly, signal the attack with the drums. Rom all around. To form a crescent shape, encircling Blackhorn City. Attack. Amanda's voice rang out again. The orderlies conveyed the command once more, and Dong Jiao opened the Book of City Lord, relaying the message to the rest of the transmigrators stationed with each hero. The undead armies from 3 directions began their measured advance, stepping forward boldly. The ground started to tremble non-stop, and the only sound was that of bones and armor scraping together. Blackhorn City. The towering watchtowers noticed the movements outside the city first. When they saw the dense grey-white halos lighting up in the distance, the already alert undead soldiers immediately realized the enemy was about to assault. "Sound the bell, sound it quickly," the emotionally devoid undead shouted urgently. Before the undead nearby could strike the bronze bell, bells from 2 other directions had already sounded. Meaning the other 2 sides of the city wall had spotted the attacking undead. Boom, boom, boom. The loud bell echoed around the city, covering all of Blackhorn City. Groups of undead soldiers ran from various parts of the city to mount the walls, ready to face the enemy. At the same time, a large number of defense apparatuses were being moved to the walls. Everything had already been arranged properly. The instant the bell rang, they proceeded according to the original plan, in an orderly fashion. At that moment, Odis, clad in heavy armor, with a few trusted aides in tow, strode up. He glanced at the enemy approaching below and then withdrew his gaze. He asked to one side, "Any movement from the enemy?" An undead general immediately stepped forward, "Your Majesty, the enemy has launched attacks from the north, west, and east simultaneously. No sign of the enemy has been spotted outside the south city yet. Surrounding from 3 directions but leaving one open." Odis began to guess the enemy's intentions. After a moment of thought, he continued to give orders, "Stay alert at the south gate, and remember, without my command, execute anyone who approaches the south gate." "Yes, my king," the skeleton hero acknowledged the command and quickly retreated. Odis continued to watch the city wall. He began to loudly issue defense commands, urging the soldiers to speed up the transport process. As time ticked away, it felt as if they were awaiting death itself, filled with tension, alarm, and fear. Even the undead struggled to remain unfazed at a moment like this. Chapter 949. They calmly faced the great battle that was about to come. The vast army outside the city was drawing ever closer. The ground began to tremble non-stop with the sound of marching footsteps. The enemy's skeleton army surged forward like a floodwater. They were advancing relentlessly, growing closer and more distinct by the moment. You could see the red marks left on their armor and the siege ladders interspersed among the skeletons. Perhaps the enemy was so eager to attack that they had not spotted the siege towers or other heavy siege equipment. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The arrow towers began their assault, with arrows shooting out from the towering structures, landing amidst the dense ranks of troops. The effect was like throwing a stone into the desert, it made no difference at all. The enemy continued to advance, reaching the second range of attack. The mage towers began their assault. Streams of dark energy flew out from the magic towers, crashing into the ranks of the skeletons. The magical bursts exploded, flinging nearby enemies into the air as bones scattered in all directions. But the negative status effects of dark attributes had no impact on the ranks of the undead. "Archers ready!" The generals bellowed their orders loudly. The skeleton archers on the city walls began to draw their bows, aiming down below. Fire! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! A volley of arrows whistled down towards the enemies below, splintering and smashing into the hostile forces below with crackling sounds. At the same time, the skeletons outside the city also raised their shields high, warding off the dense volley of whistling arrows. "Mages, prepare!" The general shouted again, and the undead mages within the city began to conjure magic. One spell missile after another was hurled into the sky, tracing an arc over the city walls, banging loudly as it struck down in the midst of the enemy's formation. On the city walls, the undead tried every possible method of attack in an attempt to slow the enemy's advance. Odis issued one order after another without pause. But they had little effect on the massed forces of the enemy. There were simply too many of them. At that moment, Odis looked curiously down below. He saw that all the attacking skeletons had suddenly stopped in their tracks. The next second, the hands raised over their shoulders now held thunderbolt spears, sparkling with lightning. A shock ran through Odis' heart. Surely, they weren't about to throw them. Indeed, as soon as this thought occurred to him, the massed ranks of the undead hurled the lightning spears in their hands. Whoosh! The whooshing sound of cutting through the air erupted as the dense mass of silver thunderbolt spears were thrown toward the city from above. The dark sky, like ink, was suddenly covered with a layer of silver firmament. Blindingly splendid. Odis yelled at the top of his voice, "Take cover, take cover!" Crack 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 crack! The sky full of thunderbolt spears rained down, crackling as they smashed into various parts of the city. Within the city, swathes of skeletons were struck and fell. The spreading arcs of electricity covered the entire area. The same type of thunderbolt spears were also being hurled at two other sections of the wall. Clearly, the enemy had executed a unified battle plan, not individually planned by various commanders. Odis was hit by a spreading arc of electricity. Fortunately, the body of an undead was also immune to the paralysis effect. He immediately looked up to the front. The troops on the city walls and within had suffered heavy casualties. Damn it, this isn't the work of the Blood Clan. As an undead, he knew this must be the effect of a viscera jar, and to attach such a thunderbolt to the spears, they had to be at least of an orange or higher level. How could the Blood Clan possibly own the Viscera Museum, let alone control the power of the viscera jars? The extensive deaths inside the city gave the enemy a chance to close in quickly. The sound of footsteps below grew closer, and the trembling of the ground became increasingly violent. Quick, fill the gaps! Odis roared loudly, urging the soldiers to continue the defense. Outside the city, on the eastern side, a low-lying area covered with rocks and boulders. Meatfist led 50 bound spirit guardians and 300 skeleton warriors. They were following a narrow stone path, searching ahead. Finally, a voice from the bound spirit guardians came from up front. Lord Meatfist, we have found a stone door here. Meatfist quickly went over and examined it closely. The stone door was well hidden and, due to the passage of time, covered with broken stones and wild grass. If it weren't for Amanda's certainty that there was a secret passageway here, it's doubtful anyone else would have found this place. After confirming the pattern on the stone door, Meatfist kicked open the stone door, saying, "This is it, let's go in." Chapter 950. Bang! Meatfist kicked out, and the stone door shattered into pieces. Dust rose all around, with broken rocks scattering in chaos. Behind the stone door was a dimly lit cave. Meatfist said directly, "Let's go, get inside." After speaking, he bent down and led a group of undead straight into the cave. The cave was not very large, with uneven stone walls on both sides showing traces of manual excavation. Along the way, the ground was covered with a layer of fungal carpet. Serpents and insects occasionally sprang out from the depths to attack these uninvited guests. But regardless of whether these snakes and insects were poisonous, they posed no threat to the undead. They crushed some that followed and harassed them, before continuing deeper into the cave. Blackhorn City. The battle between the two sides became increasingly fierce. Broken white bone littered the ground, with fallen swords half hidden among the piles of bones. Clatter! The undead of the Blood Clan, carrying siege ladders, quickly rushed to the bottom of the city walls. One end was inserted into the ground while the other was raised high. With a bang, the siege ladder was propped up against the city wall, the hook on top firmly catching on the inner side of the wall. The skeleton warriors below raised their shields above their heads. They began to swiftly climb up the siege ladder. The undead on the city walls slashed at the ladders while lifting the already prepared rolling stones and logs, smashing them down at the enemies below. Those who had made it halfway were all knocked off, falling to the ground and breaking into shattered bones. Below the city walls, more and more undead began to gather. They crowded together, using the bodies of their comrades to grow like a continually increasing mud monster, spreading upwards ceaselessly. Large quantities of broken stones and rolling logs fell from the top of the wall, blocking the expansion of the undead pile. Bang bang bang! In the distance, a series of gunshots rang out densely. The skeleton archers of the Blood Clan had entered firing range and, holding new types of firearms, began to fight back against the city walls. The orange bullets fell on the ramparts like rain, suppressing the undead on the city walls so they dared not show their heads. Firearms, damn it, it's those! Odis cursed. Seeing the enemy archers using rapid-firing hand cannons, he guessed the identity of the enemy. He remembered last autumn. The goblins from the Trade Alliance had come to him. They spoke of an undead army attacking the dwarves' 8 Peaks mountain. Believing he was the one leading the attack, they tried to mediate and stop the war from continuing. At the time, he wondered how such a large undead force could still exist in this region. Now, it seemed the undead force that attacked 8 Peaks mountain had succeeded, gaining a large number of cannons and new firearms from the dwarves. Indeed, the Blood Clan was just a smokescreen. Behind them was that newly risen undead. Damn it! Odis' hollow pupils once again looked down below. The pile of undead gathering at the bottom of the city wall grew higher and higher, more and more. With the rate of spreading, they would soon be able to climb the city wall. Odys immediately ordered, "Summon the bone giants to assist in defending the city." Yes. After the order was relayed, it wasn't long before heavy footsteps could be heard from behind. These steps, unlike those outside the city due to their sheer number, felt more like a series of giant beasts approaching. The footsteps drew closer and closer, and the targets appeared within everyone's line of sight. These were massive skeletons of enormous size. Close to 10 meters in height, their bones were as thick and sturdy as huge trees. Yet the eye sockets were empty, with no soul fire burning. Their bodies were clad in somewhat old heavy armor, and around the armor's exterior, iron chains as thick as thighs were coiled. Bone Giant, Tier 10 Troop. Dozens of bone giants dispersed towards the 3 sections of the city walls. Upon reaching the walls, they halted their footsteps, standing somewhat dazedly in place. This was the common problem with soulless troops, they could only follow orders they understood. Moreover, once they completed one order, they would enter a standby mode of sorts and halt, not moving anymore. Odys, standing atop the city wall, shouted loudly, "Assist in defending the city, prevent the enemy from climbing the walls." The bone giants sprang into action. Their clumsy bodies stood on a broken section of the inner wall, supporting themselves against an adjacent arrow tower, as their giant skulls peered over the top of the wall, looking down at the constantly gathering, upward spreading pile of skeletons. They swung their iron chains heavily down. Whoosh! The chains were like whips cutting through the air. Bang! It hit the climbing pile of skeletons as if it were a cannonball, causing the amassed pile to instantly collapse and shatter. Skeleton frames were smashed apart, scattering everywhere. The many bone giants, with each whip of their chains, slowed the onslaught of the Blood Clan's undead. Bang bang bang! A barrage of bullets started to concentrate fire on the bone giants that had poked their bodies out. Bullets rained down with a pitter-patter. The bone giants immediately raised their arms to defend, but were still staggered by the shots and could only retreat to the other side of the city walls. The huge bodies of the bone giants had become the perfect targets for the rifles. Under the dense firepower, the bones exposed outside were battered and badly damaged. Those with severe injuries had their neck bones nearly shattered by bullets, leaving only 1/3 of the spine still supporting the great skulls. However, in the next moment, streaks of grey-white light emerged from the dead white bone around them, converging on the bone giants' injured areas, mending the broken bones back to wholeness. Once repaired, they once again stuck out their bodies and continued to lash out with their chains at the massing skeleton pile. Chapter 951. The Power of the Viscera Jar. In the distance, seeing the bone giant poking its head out again and regaining its original state, everyone understood. This was the power of the Viscera Jar. Odys had equipped the bone giant with a Viscera Jar of no low rank. At this moment, over Blackhorn City, the whistling sound of something tearing through the air was heard once more. Looking up, they saw bone dragons bursting out from the clouds overhead, diving straight down towards them. Within the city, he also purchased a large number of anti-aircraft devices from the Trade Alliance. All of this was to counter the attack of the bone dragons. When Odys gave the command, the various machines standing by began to creak as they turned. The sound of bowstrings twanged, and anti-aircraft bolts, like javelins, shot out swiftly, firing towards the direction of the bone dragons. Bang bang bang! The bolts struck the bone dragons, piercing through their dragon armor and embedding into their bodies. And the bone dragons, which had been diving down, no longer continued their aggressive dive, but instead changed direction and retreated towards the outside of the city, escaping toward the rear. As for the skeleton vultures that had been released, they had just taken to the sky when they lost their targets. Flapping their wings, they landed back in the city to stand by. Odys was stunned. The bone dragon's retreat was too decisive, it didn't seem like an attack, but more like a probing action. Rustle rustle! Just then, in the sky, a group of skeletons, made up of both skeleton vultures and skeleton giant bats, charged at the city from all sides. Odys, without time to think, sent the skeleton vultures up again to meet the attack. Both sides' flying units collided like two dense mists in the air. Both sides' units fought tirelessly, prolonging the duration of the stalemate. In the rear of the Blood Clan army, Amanda's gaze was fixed on the battlefield as Dong Jie reported the messages from the other two fronts beside her. The bone dragon's several probes had not brought forth any new aerial units. She then ordered, send the aerial ships into the battlefield, maintain the distance, and cover the city walls with firepower. There was no need to pass the order through a messenger. Understood. Dong Jiao immediately opened the Book of City Lord and passed on the command. Before long, from the rear of the three directions in the sky, one massive yet slow aerial ship started appearing within the sight line of both factions. Once arrayed in the planned formations. Boom boom boom. Flames suddenly erupted in the sky. Traded shelling. Where are the anti-aircraft crossbows? Shoot those balloons in the sky. Otis grabbed a nearby undead operating a device and roared loudly. The undead quickly adjusted the device, firing at the targets straight ahead. Thick crossbow bolts raced forward but vanished in the night sky, leaving no trace. My king, we're out of range, they have calculated the distance, said the undead. The shells fell from the sky, which required even more distance. The enemy apparently had everything calculated, which allowed the aerial ships to enter the battlefield. Filled with rage, Otis pushed the undead in front of him and continued to bellow, send out the skeleton vultures, tear those aerial ships to shreds. In the sky, the skeleton vulture changed direction, attempting to circumvent the entanglement with the skeleton vulture and skeleton giant bat ahead, to strike at the aerial ships in the rear. But the opposition would not let them get away. Still firmly entangled. Meanwhile, the cannons on the airship never ceased firing. The dense barrage of cannonballs constantly poured into the city. Below the city, in the dim underground tunnels, Meatfist and others had already entered the drainage pipes beneath Blackhorn City through the secret passages outside the city. As part of the royal palace's drainage system, it was incredibly vast and complex, essentially covering every area of the city. Were these small animals in the sewers living on? Meatfist, together with 50 bound spirit guardians and 300 skeleton warriors, was moving swiftly through the tunnels. The shaking of the ground from the battle above made the underground pipes also start to teeter on the brink of collapse. The ceiling continuously shed small stones. Some places had even collapsed. After continuing to advance for half an hour. Found it, Meatfist said. Several of them had reached the end of the road and discovered ladders leading upward. Meatfist led a group of skeletons up the stairs. Pushing aside the concealed stone slab, they emerged in a deserted courtyard. And in front of the courtyard was the grand and magnificent royal palace. However, at this moment, the place was deserted, not even a single guard in sight. Everyone climbed out of the tunnels. Meatfist opened the map he'd brought, determined their location, and then said, "Let's go to the Viscera Museum." The team of 100 exited the royal palace, threading through the streets in the dead of night. From time to time, groups of undead hastened past them, but no one paid them any attention. "May have infiltrated the city, our king has sent us to reinforce the guards." The bound spirit guardians looked taken aback. Examining the newcomer's armor, which seemed somewhat different from their own, they asked again. "Where are you from? I don't think I've seen you before." Bang! With one punch, Meatfist crushed his skull, and the few bound spirit guardians pounced instantly. Using the noise of the cannon fire outside, they killed all the opposing undead. Once they had cleaned up, Meatfist continued, "Some of you, put on their clothes, stand guard outside, and don't let anyone approach." Yes. 10 bound spirit guardians began to don their armor. Just like the few undead before, they stood guard around the Viscera Museum. The rest hid in a nearby corner. Meatfist, along with a few others, entered the Viscera Museum. As soon as they entered the hall, they saw the corpse witch and funeral priests standing inside. "Are you the Blood Clan attacking the Great Cemetery?" the leading corpse witch asked. He other carefully. Arlene replied, "Yes." Meatfist went on, "Amanda is attacking the city, and she sent me to find you." Arlene was startled, while the other funeral priests were also frozen in place. "You're lying," Arlene stated. "Do you think I need to lie to you when I come in here? Are all the corpse witches here so unwise?" Chapter 952. The corpse witch and funeral priests were all rendered somewhat speechless. In the ranks of the undead, the corpse witch represented scholars, masters of the secrets of immortality. In any undead power, corpse witches were respected and treated with preference. This was still the first time an undead had said that these people were not smart. "Queen, your majesty, you have been missing for 100 years without any news, how could you possibly suddenly appear now, and under the name of the Blood Clan, attack the Great Cemetery?" Arlene asked directly. "This all happened so suddenly. It made everyone somewhat reluctant to accept it. In the beginning, when Amanda disappeared, the entire nation's resources were mobilized to search for the Queen's whereabouts, but they always came up empty. That eventually led to Odys ascending the throne. After so many years, someone sneaks into the city claiming to be sent by the Queen. Compared to believing that the Queen has suddenly appeared, it feels more like an enemy's conspiracy. Meatfist pondered for a moment and explained, Amanda woke up a few months ago and, learning that the former Anglina kingdom was no more, took the opportunity of Odys attacking the Federation, and launched this war. When Amanda had him come, the first task was to go to the Viscera Museum. If there was a corpse witch named Arlene inside, then he was to tell him about his army's movement. If there was no such person, or if Arlene showed non-cooperation, Meatfist was to cleanse the place of everyone inside and destroy the viscera jars in the museum, to weaken the defending army's power. So, Meatfist's mission was the Viscera Museum, and Arlene was just part of it. Believing or not believing has no impact on the outcome. Hearing the explanation from the towering troll hero opposite him, Arlene fell silent. He still harbored doubts, but there was no point in the other party coming in just to deceive him. After a moment, he continued, if what you say is true, does that mean that the troops currently besieging the city are not the Blood Clan, but Queen Amanda's army? If it had been the Queen's army, then many undead would be spared death in today's battle. Even within the city, many undead would welcome the return of the Queen. Meatfist shook his head and corrected, now Amanda is just a hero general under the Lord, her troops are the Lord's as well, but you're right about one thing, Amanda is the commander of the army, and this is indeed a war of restoration. The corpse witch and funeral priests were digesting the information in that statement. So, the Queen had joined forces with the Lord for the sake of restoration, borrowing his troops to reclaim Anglina Kingdom. That would mean that even if Blackhorn City fell, it wouldn't be the kingdom it once was. Instead, it would become part of that Lord's territory. After a while, Arlene continued to ask, so you've come here, was it the Queen who sent you for me? Finding you is part of it, of course, we have other tasks as well, Meatfist said. Amanda couldn't confirm which of her old subjects still lived, but she could be sure that as a corpse witch, Arlene would definitely still be in the Viscera Museum. A corpse witch is indispensable to an undead power. Even if Odys were again insane, he wouldn't kill a corpse witch. So, Meatfist's first step was to find Arlene. Arlene and the corpse witches behind him had a quiet discussion. Then turned around and asked, what do you need us to do? Meatfist said, first, take out all the viscera jars from the museum. Once the viscera jars are taken out, the army's power in the city will instantly wane, and Odys will know there's a problem here the first thing and send troops over. None of us will be able to get away, Arlene immediately said. No matter, once they are taken out, we'll leave this place and a safe location will be arranged for you, Meatfist spoke. Arlene had no other choice but to do as the towering undead troll before him had said. Even if he did not, the undead before him would have ways to directly destroy this place, and render the effects of the viscera jars null. Approaching each miniature structure, he extended a bony finger and gave a slight twist. Hiss! The viscera jars in the grooves rose up one by one. As the viscera jars were removed, rings of light rapidly closed and returned to the bodies of the viscera jars. In that moment, the effects of the viscera jars on the Great Cemetery's troops disappeared. Seeing that the other party was somewhat honest, Meatfist said, let's go, we'll go out. Leading the corpse witches and funeral priests holding the viscera jars, they exited the gate. Several hundred soldiers also emerged from a concealed spot nearby. Once the gathering of undead was complete, they led the corpse witches back to the royal palace's backyard, at the entrance of the sewer. Arlene, arrange for someone to guide me, and the rest will stay here and not wander off, Meatfist instructed. Ah, okay, Arlene nodded and chose a funeral priest to lead the way. Arlene and the others, holding the viscera jars, followed the staircase down into the sewer. After they had gone down, Meatfist waved his hand, let's go, to the armory. At the same time, the South City Gate was also in turmoil. Densely packed were many undead. Large and small bundles were blocked on the street, in chaos and crowdedness. Among them, some former undead officials were also mixed in the crowd. Everyone was well aware that the enemy outside was on the verge of breaching the city, and the South Gate was their only way out. Chapter 953. Having spent all his wealth to become an undead, he hadn't done so to accompany Odys to his death. At the moment, the city gates were shut tight, the army blocking the road in the middle. They stood in tight formation, guarding the city within. "Let us go out. I am the Minister of Internal Affairs of the Royal Palace, let me out now," said one. "The city is about to fall, and you aren't defending it but just staring at the gates. Damn it, I spent my life's savings to become an undead, and I haven't lived for a few years yet now the city is going to fall. Damn it, let us out, who wants to be buried with Odis? Exactly, your damned city has been supported by my caravan, and now when it's going to die, it drags us along." A chorus of curses came from the undead, while those guarding the gates had already drawn their swords. They were ready to fight anyone who dared to come close. "Let's fight them, break out. Even if we die, we won't die in this city. Charge, steal their weapons, and let's get out of the city. Open the gates." With a clatter, those gathered at the southern city gate rushed forward. They clashed with the city guards, instantly turning the scene into a riot. The battlefield. The sounds of cannon fire, muskets, and the whistling of magic filled the air. Silver-white lightning spears once again tore through the sky, aiming at the enemies atop the city walls. The lightning spears fell like rain, creating a field of white bone. The war had been raging for an indeterminate amount of time. The undead knew no fatigue and certainly had no concept of shifts or rests. The sun seemed to have risen from the horizon. But the smoke rising from the battlefield continued to obscure the sky, making it seem like the dead of night. Outside the city walls, piles of shattered bones lay against the walls, forming small hills. More undead trampled over these hills, continuing to climb upwards. Over the city, hundreds of bone dragons circled, trying to approach the city to breathe dragon breath onto the enemies below. Within the city, continuous bolts flew upwards, driving the bone dragons away. The aerial ships continued to pour down cannon fire. The solid city walls were full of cracks, incessantly bombarded and battered. The skeletons inside the city tore down nearby houses. Stone and timber were piled up in the collapsed areas, trying their best to repair the still crumbling walls that could collapse at any moment. But the undead of the Blood Clan seemed endless. They charged towards the city walls as if they were inexhaustible. "Keep defending, clear out those climbing up," Odie still roared loudly. The city's defending undead pushed down each skeleton that managed to climb the walls, preventing them from reaching the top. "Woo!" A wailing cry arose. In the rear of the city, a number of undead with coffins hanging before them entered the battlefield. Soul Coffin, Tier 9 troops. They opened a crack in the coffins, releasing countless translucent wandering spirits. Emitting painful moans, they joined the turmoil of battle. Soul Coffin, within the ranks, was a special type of troop. Its own combat power was close to a 5th tier level. But among its skills was the ability to absorb the souls of living creatures. It could gather the souls of living creatures within a certain area, drawing them into the coffin before them, and transforming them into controllable wandering spirits to be sent back into the battlefield. This type of troop often played a significant role in battles against living creatures. There was never a shortage of souls to absorb. However, against other undead troops, their advantage was much reduced. This was why, despite the ongoing battle, Odis had only now sent the soul coffin into the fray. The moaning spirits, their translucent bodies, passed straight through the thick city walls and attacked the undead outside. The spirits themselves had no physical form and were not high in rank. But against the unthinking ordinary skeletons, they still caused chaos and disruption, drawing groups of undead into disarray, running around in confusion. Yet, what was happening seemed more like a last struggle. The overall situation still tipped towards the side of the Blood Clan. Another barrage of intense cannon fire fell. Pieces of the city wall collapsed. The attacking skeletons, stepping on the broken bricks, directly climbed over the city wall and engaged the defending undead in fierce combat. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before those in the city would be out of time. The bone giant stood up once again, swinging its iron chains. Boom boom boom. It seemed they were waiting just for it to reveal itself. Cannonballs immediately landed on the bone giant. The massive body of the bone giant fell backwards. And unlike before, its broken bones did not restore themselves. Odis, taken aback, quickly looked towards the battlefield. But he saw rings of light shrinking from the edges of the city towards the center. The power of the viscera jar was gone. "Arlene, you damned thing," Odis cursed. His first thought wasn't that someone had breached the city but that Arlene and those corpse witches had introduced the viscera jars at a critical moment. Odis was furious. These guys really did oppose him at every turn. He called over his trusted aide and said loudly, "Take some men to the Viscera Museum, execute Arlene, have the remaining corpse witches put the viscera jars back, and then throw them into the dungeon." "Yes, my lord," answered the aide. The aide took his leave, staggering under the barrage, heading toward the Viscera Museum. Without the augmentation by the viscera jars, the combat power displayed by the soldiers within the city once again reduced. Under the strikes of lightning spears and artillery, sheets of undead died. Odie stood still. Chapter 954. Watching the dead soldiers, the bone giant severely damaged, couldn't stand up under the crushing pressure of the shells. Boom boom boom. Explosion after explosion echoed from within the city. Odie suddenly turned around, only to see streaks of fire lighting up the city. It was coming from the direction of the arsenal. Boom boom. Another explosion went off, this time at the South City Gate. Explosions and combat broke out throughout the city. Countless undead swarmed into the streets, all rushing towards the South Gate. "Watch out for the bone dragons!" someone else shouted. Several hundred bone dragons, led by a desiccated giant dragon, flew directly over the city. Soaring at low altitude, beams of red and black light swept across the city walls, clearing away the undead guards on top. After one sweep, the walls were empty of any living being. And more bone dragons circled around, spewing black beams of light, enveloping the bone giants within them. Their massive bodies began to decay, the iron chains draped over them turning to orange-red molten iron, dripping downward. Eventually, like ordinary undead, within the black beams of light, they turned to ashes. East City Gate. A black, towering storm began to swirl and spread throughout the city. Everything in its path, whether troops or buildings, were reduced to ashes in the storm, disappearing without a trace. More and more undead, marked with red on their chests, stormed the city walls. Like a deluge, they covered the walls, spreading into the city. The enemy had launched their final assault. It was over, they couldn't hold out. "My king, we can't hold this position, let's retreat from the South Gate," a skeleton officer said, pulling at the somewhat dazed Odis. "Right, gather the troops, follow me in the retreat," Odis said, coming to his senses and shouting loudly. He dashed down from the city wall, running towards the South City Gate. Along the way, he encountered quite a few soldiers who had scrambled down in panic. They quickly gathered, nearing 1,000 men. The city walls, without command, could no longer withstand the assault of the army. The city gates were flung open in an instant, an army like a flood pouring through. They slaughtered their way towards the royal palace at the city's center. South City Gate. Odis, with nearly 2,000 battered and beaten soldiers, rushed frantically toward the South City Gate. Behind them was an enemy surge like a tsunami. After a mad dash, abandoning helmets and armor, they finally saw the barricades set up at the South City Gate and the soldiers guarding them. Odis paused. These barricades and soldiers were all here, so what was that explosion about? And how did those fleeing get out? Without time to think further, he had already run up to the barricades. He yelled, "Quick, open the gates, come out with me." However, under the anxious eyes of Odis and the accompanying undead, several more barricades were added in front of them, blocking their way. "What are you doing? Has everyone lost their minds? Move these barricades and open the gates," Odis demanded furiously, kicking the barricade in front of him over. The soldiers next to Odis couldn't care less anymore. The enemy was right behind them, they all reached out to remove the barricades themselves. "Are you Odis?" At that moment, from the city gate, a tall skeleton stepped forward. Odis was startled and immediately drew the giant sword from his back, eyeing the other warily. He could confirm that this troll skeleton was not one of Blackhorn City's own. Then there was only one possibility, when the South City Gate was opened. These enemies had sneaked in. "Who are you?" Odis demanded, staring straight at the other. "Quite obviously, your enemy." Chapter 955. Odis' skeleton was also bulky, but different from Meatfist. Meatfist was an undead troll, with bones that were naturally tall. Odis, on the other hand, had the skeleton of a human, not as tall as Meatfist, the robustness of his bones was the main feature. "Big talk," Odis chided. He pushed off the ground and leaped high into the air, his giant sword swinging down towards Meatfist. Odis, clad in heavy armor and wielding a giant sword. Yet his movements were light and swift, bursting with explosive power. Meat Fist dodged to the side. Bang! A loud noise. The heavy sword chopped down onto the ground, leaving a deep crack. Meat Fist, seizing the moment, hurled a punch from his fist, aiming straight for Odie's head. The moment the punch was thrown, it was accompanied by a thunderous boom. Odie parried with his giant sword horizontally, blocking the oncoming punch with a loud bang. His body staggered back 2 steps. Hearing the pursuers getting closer, Odie didn't hesitate at all. He halted his retreat, launched a forced attack, aiming to open the city gates and break out with his people before the pursuers arrived. His giant sword swung repeatedly, creating a white barrier of sword shadows in front of him. But Meat Fist was a close combat hero skilled in fighting. He moved swiftly, skillfully dodging the opponent's moves by utilizing the terrain around him. The more this happened, the more urgent Odie felt. And his sword danced faster and faster, but still couldn't bring down the opposing troll skeleton. Just as the pursuers were about to reach him, Odie suddenly kicked a barricade at Meat Fist and turned to sprint towards the city gate. Meat Fist shattered the flying barricade with a punch and surged forward, once again blocking Odie's path. He hurled a punch, forcing Odie back. Odie roared, and with one arm, he whirled the giant sword towards his opponent. The giant sword flew out of his hand. Odie instantly took out a scroll and ripped it apart. Whoosh! A winding flame serpent burst forth from the scroll. After soaring into the sky, it dived down towards the skeleton troll in front. The power of this scroll was sufficient for a level 4 magic. The giant sword was flying head-on. Meat Fist moved sideways to evade. Bang! The thrown giant sword spun and embedded itself in the city gate's door. And the next second, the flame serpent that fell from the sky also crashed near Meat Fist. Hoosh! The serpent exploded violently, sending rings of flames, reaching meters around. Whether it was the undead from either side or the rows of barricades, all were engulfed by the flames. When the flames vanished, only Meat Fist and Odie were left, both charred all over. All the densely packed barricades around them had disappeared without a trace. Bang! As the smoke from the flames started to clear, in the blink of an eye, Meat Fist's figure shot forward again, swinging out a power-packed punch, which landed heavily on his shoulder. The armor caved in, and even his collarbone was directly smashed. Odie wanted to counterattack, but Meat Fist swung another punch, breaking his left collarbone this time. His body was pinned firmly to the ground by Meat Fist, rendering him incapable of retaliating. By then, the army had quickly approached from behind. Meat Fist wiped his scorched skull. Take him back. Entering the royal palace. Looking around at the familiar yet foreign scenery, it was as if she had been dreaming a very, very long dream. In the past, when Amanda walked here, she would see royal family members with smiling faces, girls holding wreaths, priests in long robes, and ministers loudly praising the Queen's glory. Everything felt as if it had happened just yesterday. But now, the place was empty, everyone was gone, only she remained with her immortal life. With a casual wave, golden liquid flowed swiftly. It spread throughout the entire palace following her steps. The skeleton chandeliers were enveloped in gold, becoming golden chandeliers. The skeleton sculptures on both sides turned into golden armored soldiers, stepping upon the white jade stone steps. The white bone throne transformed into gold. The white bone incense burner next to the throne turned into an upright golden crane, its beak holding an incense burner, emanating a fragrant aroma. Amanda had just taken her seat on the throne, when Rollina landed at the door, folding her wings and striding in. After curiously looking around, she slumped into the chair, listless. "I can't go on, the sun is out," she said. "You're not afraid of the sunlight," Amanda replied. "Afraid or not, we still have to maintain the traditions of the Blood Clan." Rollina switched positions, draping her long legs over the armrest again. The war gradually ceased, and the smoke that filled the sky was also dispersing. The morning light shone down on the earth. "Where are the others?" Amanda continued. Rollina said, "They are following orders, guarding the troops, protecting key buildings and resources. Everything is going smoothly." Amanda nodded. At that moment, footsteps were heard from outside the door. Under the watch of the bound spirit guardians, the priests and corpse witches walked briskly in. Upon seeing Amanda high on her throne, the corpse witches halted their steps. Then loudly exclaimed, "Her Majesty the Queen!" "Morning!" The sun's rays pierced through the window, casting a golden glow. Fang Hao opened his eyes and glanced at the watch on the bedside table. It was 7 a.m. It was already that time. He sat up in bed and picked up the Book of Lords for a look. He didn't get any battle report from the Great Cemetery of Odis. But when he flipped to the regional channel. Chapter 956. It turns out that everyone was discussing the Great Cemetery of Odis. Every now and then, a couple of photos of the Black Sky battle were posted in the channel. Fang Hao was also curious about the situation of the battle. So he clicked on each one and took a closer look. The photos were taken at night, and if not for the high resolution of the Book of Lords, probably nothing would have been captured. The first photo was taken outside the city. Dense clusters of white bone soldiers were gathering and climbing the walls. 2 more photos captured the bone dragon and intense street fighting within the city. From the angle of view, it belonged to a transmigrator from the Odis faction. The photos showed dense undead. The scene, dark and gloomy, was quite terrifying. One could tell from the photos. Blackhorn City had already entered the street fighting phase last night. That means, by now, they must have already occupied Blackhorn City. Why hadn't Dong Jiayu sent me a message yet? But Amanda was really impressive. She arrived in Blackhorn City yesterday morning and took down the city at night. Is this city made of paper or what? He closed the photos and continued following the chats of others. The night has passed, how's the war on the undead side? It should be over, right? Siege a city, it's not that fast. Ancient battles, fighting over a city for a year or half a year is very normal. Normal my ass. The ancients had various abilities and heroes. Did the ancients have bone dragons? Speaking with such pedantic flourishes. Those brothers who posted photos last night, why aren't they posting now? Haven't they been captured, have they? Right, I couldn't sleep all night, just waiting for the news this morning. Me too. What are you talking about? What did I miss? Can someone explain to me? It's simple, there's a big boss in the undead region. Some undead from different factions started fighting. Loads of undead, really spooky. Inside the regional channel, everyone was discussing this matter. But obviously, after last night's fierce battle, no more news about the Great Cemetery had come out. It looks like, Blackhorn City is in the final stages of processing. He glanced again at the World Channel. The rapidly reversing chat seemed to have no one mentioning anything related to the undead or Odis. Only the people in the regional channel were still continuously following this matter. And they kept tagging those people who posted photos last night, to confirm if they were all slaughtered or subjected to some horrifying sacrificial ritual. Having not received a message from Dong Jiayu, Fang Hao got up to wash up. He began his daily morning exercise. The environment inside the city was very nice, just like walking in a park. Inside the Blackstone training ground, there were even bunny girls training. Giggling, punching, and kicking, it's hard to say how impressive it was, but it was certainly a pleasing visual. After breakfast, he finally received a message from Dong Jiayu. Brother Hao, Blackhorn City has been taken down, Amanda is officially taking over the city, currently arranging some internal affairs. This message, actually, didn't surprise Fang Hao at all. After all, photos had been posted by someone earlier. He thought for a moment and replied, everyone worked hard, no heroes and personnel were injured, right? Dong Jiayu replied, Meat Fist suffered some burns, but it's nothing serious, everyone else is fine. During the combat mainly regular soldiers were in the front. Burns? But it wasn't a big issue, for undead heroes, as long as there wasn't major physical damage, repairs could be made. No one else being injured, was indeed good news. Good, has Amanda mentioned when you guys are coming back? Fang Hao continued asking. Dong Jiayu replied, just occupied the city, Amanda is currently summoning her former officials. Wow, summoning former officials, just like a TV drama. Fang Hao said. Exactly, it's almost like a TV drama. Alright, let me know when Amanda finishes up, then I can come over and integrate the Great Cemetery into our territory, Fang Hao said. Having occupied the city, it still requires the city lord's throne, or king's throne, to confirm the occupation. So, Fang Hao would still need to go there. Plus, he needed to reward those who participated in the battle, to motivate transmigrators to be willing to engage in combat. Otherwise, everyone would start sneakily developing, just like him, then wouldn't that mean everyone would be laying low? Understood, Brother Hao. Okay. Silver Wing City. Hall of Justice Meeting Room. Leader Dualty, Archbishop Milton, Mage Guildmaster Grigor Ya. The three sat at a round table, discussing the recent border situation. Dualty began, the border has gradually calmed down now, all the undead have retreated back to the border, no further probing has occurred. Still, we can't be careless, if the Blood Clan's army fails, Odis might again muster forces to attack the border, we still can't pull back the troops until we confirm who won or lost Blackhorn City, Milton said softly. Yes, I understand that. Dualty nodded. Then he continued asking, has the church received any news about the Great Cemetery? Since Suhade's incident, the Federation had lost an important source of intelligence. Nothing about the affairs on the undead side had come through since then. This made all three feel somewhat regretful, and they blamed the frontline bishops for being incompetent, not even able to protect a single saint. Milton said, the undead contacts were always through Suhade, and everything broke off when he ran into trouble. Chapter 957. But it seemed that the Archbishop did not display too much of a sense of loss. It's a pity about Suhade, Doherty sighed softly, then said, it seems we need to train another transmigrator to complete the plan of consolidating all transmigrators within the territory. Grigor Ya then spoke up, Mage Li Rong is a good candidate, capable and also performed excellently in this recent external combat. I've also heard of this Li Rong, the owner of Fairy Dream Tower, indeed capable. If trustworthy, she could be considered the planned candidate, Doherty stated. Often attending elite gatherings had given Li Rong some notoriety. Indeed, especially this time, her performance was comparable to that of city generals, she could definitely be cultivated, Grigor Ya was also strongly recommending. If nothing had happened to Suhade, she wouldn't have mentioned Li Rong. But now, Suhade had died, leaving only Li Rong from those who participated in the war, and it was good to push her own people forward. It could indeed be worth inspecting her, to see. Doherty had just opened his mouth. By his side, the Archbishop gently set down his teacup, smiling as he interrupted them, Suhade is not dead yet, I think Suhade is still the more suitable candidate. Both were shocked. The news from the front had clearly stated that Suhade had died. His neck bore a huge gash, and he had been left overnight. How could he possibly still be alive? Seeing their confusion, Milton gently explained, I naturally have a way to bring him back to life, it only requires a bit more time. The consolidation of the transmigrators will proceed as originally planned. Oh? Really? But then they thought about it. The church spending some cost to resurrect the dead was actually not unacceptable. Milton nodded, the circumstances of Suhade's death are somewhat suspicious. With the abilities of a wandering spirit, it is impossible to kill him silently. Don't let this news out for now, wait until Suhade is resurrected to see if there are any new clues. Both were startled again. Milton meant that someone within the Federation had planned to use a wandering spirit for a stealthy attack to kill Suhade. This was no small matter. Well, okay, Doherty didn't say much else. Since Suhade was unharmed, it was best to continue as originally planned. As for the assassination of Suhade, the Hall of Justice and the Mage Association didn't say anything. They believed it was definitely not one of their own. Good, then the plan remains as is, let's now discuss the retreat of the troops from the front. Blackhorn City. Inside a temporary bedroom in the royal palace, Amanda stood in front of a tall bronze mirror, looking at herself in the mirror. Mask, crown, golden armor, all transformed into a golden liquid, seeping into the space necklace on her neck. Once completely naked, revealing skin like that of a mummified corpse. Amanda then turned away, no longer facing the mirror. On the side, Arlene gently clapped her hands. The door opened and a line of funeral priests entered. Each carrying a new mask, crown, and garments as they approached. They began to dress the queen. Before long, dressed neatly, Amanda looked again at herself in the mirror. A golden robe with fine purple threads embroidered with eerily noble undead patterns. The gaunt face wore a new golden mask, its design and lines highlighting feminine beauty. Her head adorned with a gemstone-studded golden crown, her hand clutching a scepter representing her royal status. After gazing for a while, she turned and walked out. Let's go, let's see the old friends from the past. Yes, my queen. A retinue of undead followed behind the queen, heading in the direction of the royal palace. Chapter 958. Outside the royal palace. Clank, clank. Rusty shackles, dragging heavy iron balls. On the stone pavement, they left long trails of scratches. More than a dozen shackled undead heroes, under the escort of numerous guards, walked towards the royal palace. These were all captured undead hero generals. Odys, walking at the very edge on the left side. His armor had been removed, and in addition to the heavy shackles, he was also wrapped in layers of iron chains. Apart from being able to move his feet, his body was wrapped up in chains like a rice dumpling. Odys walked forward silently. He knew what he would face. Nothing more than the victor's show-off and mockery of the losers. Similarly, he was also curious as to who his enemy was. With so many troops and high-ranking heroes. With such strength. Why hide and attack this place in the guise of the Blood Clan? My king, what do we do next? A skeleton hero asked on the side. Undead do not feel the unease and fear before judgment like living creatures do. Their emotional display is rather subdued, with only their soul retaining a strong aversion to the threat of death. Odys slightly turned his head to look and spoke, perhaps they'll attempt to recruit us, such a large city still needs people. Bringing all the captured heroes here, he guessed there might be some recruitment. Heroes willing to submit would be pardoned and assigned new duties. After all, Blackhorn City wasn't just a village, it required a lot of people to manage. I will not submit to the Blood Clan. Red Duke, a hypocrite who climbed to the top by deceiving women, has no right to possess Blackhorn City. The god of death will punish these misshapen children abandoned by the gods. The undead muttered curses against their enemy as they walked forward. To these undead, blindly engaged in the battle, the information they received still spelled the enemy as the Blood Clan's army. Odys, at this time, had no mood to tell them the truth. Onward they went. Suddenly, amidst the cursing, a curious question arose. These statues, what are they? Odys looked up, glancing to one side, and his calm soul fire began to fluctuate intensely. His gaze then suddenly turned to the other side. Golden statues stood on both sides of the road. Guards wielding war halberds, warriors blowing horns with their heads tilted back. And, a human girl with sweet smiles, holding a wreath of flowers. All of this. A sudden stupor struck Odys' mind. It was as if he had returned to 100 years ago, when it was still called the Anglina Kingdom and he was still human. The skeleton heroes who were just cursing the Blood Clan grew noisy. Among them were also many seniors who recognized the scene before them. What is happening? Who orchestrated this war? Tell me. Odys demanded, looking at a guard by his side, raising his voice. At that moment, his calm emotions were tinged with fear and dread. No longer curious about who used the Blood Clan's name to wage war, but fearful of moving forward to confirm his suspicions. No one answered him, he was simply pushed and shoved by the guards to keep walking. And they quickened their pace. As they got closer to the royal palace, the more gold features appeared around them, the more uneasy Odys and the others grew. Finally, they were pushed into the royal palace. A long carpet lay on the ground. On both sides stood tall and majestic golden armored soldiers. Above, a golden throne and golden cranes carrying incense burners. Everything was so familiar. Odys and the others were pushed to the center of the hall. The whole place fell silent. Skeleton King Odys, Orange Tier 5 hero. Damn, that's Odys, an Orange Tier 5 hero. Just orange? How did he become a leader? That's too weak. Exactly, there are loads of orange heroes in the army, and yet he's a king. It's not like that. I heard that Meatfist, the troll tribe's leader, is normally considered chief level at orange tier. Can the troll's dwelling place compare to here? This Odys is too weak. Exactly, Amanda is dark gold tier, no wonder we didn't feel any pressure on the way here, turns out he's only orange tier. His title is Skeleton King, what a waste of the title. Man, when did you guys become so picky, talking about an orange hero as if he's trash? If you guys don't value him, then give that hero to me. Heroes are being distributed as well? Then, I don't want the bone dragon, I want a hero. There are so many hero captives below, maybe they really will distribute them. Really? Give me that trash Odys. Amanda had not yet appeared, but heroes and transmigrators had already gathered on both sides. The heroes didn't interact much, but the transmigrators had already started discussing. Before the battle began, everyone knew that this was Amanda's battle for the restoration of her kingdom. Calling Amanda Queen sounded impressively imposing. In the end, the one who usurped Amanda's throne turned out to be an Orange Tier 5 hero. Among the heroes in the army, there were also several Orange Tier 1s. They were somewhat disappointed. They immediately labeled Odis as a failure. As the transmigrators discussed, light footsteps came from a corridor on the side. Under everyone's gaze. Chapter 959. Amanda, clad in a sumptuous robe, emerged with an entourage of the corpse witch funeral priests, in a procession full of ritualistic solemnity. At this moment, among the captive generals in the middle, some had already knelt down, loudly proclaiming "My queen." Odis' soul fire pulsated wildly, unconsciously making him want to bow in homage. But in the end, he stood upright. His gaze fixed intently on the woman who walked slowly toward the throne. Amanda sat upon the throne. She looked toward Odis in the center. Her voice was grave as she began, "Odis, it's been a long time." Odis' body stiffened. Suppressing the turmoil deep within his soul, he spoke, "Amanda, you're actually still alive. Are you surprised?" "If I were still human, perhaps I'd be a little shocked," continued Odis. "No, I can feel your emotions, you are surprised and afraid. Don't flatter yourself, Amanda, you're no longer the queen here, and the kingdom that once was no longer exists," Odis said loudly. At this, the corpse witch Jarl stepped forward and scolded, "Odis, watch your tone." "Humph, why should I watch my tone, Jarl? I wonder why you've always opposed me at every turn. It turns out you knew Amanda was still alive and have been putting on a show with me all along, you shameless folks," Odis continued. He knew his end was nigh. Amanda would surely not let him go, and capitulating now would only lead to a death devoid of dignity in front of his former subordinates. Jarl wanted to say more, but Amanda gestured for him to step aside for the moment. Amanda, clutching the scepter in her hand, asked, "Odis, I will extinguish your soul. Do you have any last words?" Odis' soul fire trembled violently once more, as he stood his ground. After a moment's contemplation, he said, "If I had managed this place well, would you have returned?" Amanda looked at him, shaking her head slightly, "No. Just as I thought, still you are, the queen of wisdom and courage." Odis, wrapped in chains, bowed slightly. Amanda tapped her scepter, "Bring forth the guards, take Odis away, extinguish his soul, and seal his bones." Several guards came from outside and took Odis away. Odis did not resist, and followed them out. After Odis had left, Amanda turned her attention to the remaining captive heroes. There were 12 in total. Undead possessed a speed greater than that of living creatures, much more convenient. Those at the end of their lives yet yearning to live on would seek to join the undead. And the undead faction was equally welcoming to hero units, wanting them to join their ranks. Thus, even after fighting all the way to Blackhorn City, there were still these skeleton heroes after last night. They had come cursing their enemies, condemning the Blood Clan. Now, they all stood there obediently, without uttering a word. Amanda continued, "I am the Queen of Anglina. Some of you must still remember me. Those willing to remain and serve the kingdom will be pardoned for your crimes. If not, your souls will be extinguished." Her words were blunt, and offered everyone a choice. Clang! In an instant, 7 heroes knelt on the ground, "Your Majesty, we are willing to serve the kingdom." The remaining undead heroes stood still, clearly indicating their position. The queen nodded, dispensing with further words, "Take these 5 away and extinguish their souls." Clang! The captives were dragged off, the clattering of shackles echoing. The transmigrators whispered amongst themselves, commenting on what a pity it was to kill them, for they could have served as heroes. But, given the scene and atmosphere, no one dared to voice such thoughts aloud. Amanda had Jarl check the remaining 7. To make sure they were not heroes with altered souls. Heroes altered by the corpse which were absolutely loyal to their territory and existing lord. This type of soul binding could not be altered a second time. If they could not swear allegiance to Amanda, nor serve the transmigrators as heroes. Even if they agreed on the surface, they might stab you in the back immediately, in vengeance for their own lord. After dealing with the captives, Amanda addressed them again, "Jarl." "Your Majesty," Jarl stepped forward. "You will accompany the Blood Hunter leader, take over the southern border army, and submit a peace treaty to the Federation as a member of the Blood Clan," Amanda instructed. Jarl was momentarily startled but understood when he saw an undead with massive bat wings stepping forward. Naturally, he knew who Blood Hunter referred to. "Yes, Your Majesty," Jarl accepted the command. Blood Hunter nodded in agreement as well. "Good, you two set out now, take the bone dragon and make no delays en route, she said. Yes. The two immediately exited the royal palace. Amanda continued, Scholar Nelson, you are now in charge of the Viscera Museum. Meat Fist Commander will take control of the city barracks, Spencer and Aceti will lead troops to strengthen patrols in and around the city. Order after order was issued, allocating tasks to all the heroes and transmigrators. During the earlier battle, the South City Gate was wide open. Many unidentified undead had fled through the South City Gate. The city was in a state of chaos. The current task was to restore order in the city, and then gradually place her own people. This would not be accomplished quickly, but she had ample time. Silverwing City. Chapter 960. Grigorya, accompanied by her guards, stepped out of the Hall of Justice. She hadn't felt particularly involved in the morning meeting. The one thing that was mentioned about the Federation's support for Li Rong was interrupted by Archbishop Milton. That saint, he was still not dead. It was quite unexpected for her. Reliable? And how did Li Rong find out? The transmigrator across from her immediately responded, the intelligence is very reliable. Sister Li said she contacted a transmigrator who went to war with the Blood Clan and obtained first-hand information. Grigorya was even more surprised. Li Rong moved quickly, Su Hate had intelligence from the undead, and his influence rapidly increased. Now, having successfully taken over Blackhorn City, she immediately acquired intelligence from the Blood Clan. Her influence will definitely also grow. Ding, dong. Knocking on the carriage wall, Grigorya said, turn around, back to the Hall of Justice. The carriage immediately turned around and stopped in front of the Hall of Justice again. Grigorya got off the carriage, walking inside with the transmigrator. As they walked, she instructed, repeat exactly what you just told me to the people inside, don't speak of anything else. Understood. Understood. The two walked down the corridor and directly entered the conference hall. Amanda was quick in her actions. In the afternoon, Fang Hao received a message from Dong Jiayu. He banquet meal. From Dong Jiayu, he had acquired a single-page map marking the location of Blackhorn City. After securing it, he activated the teleportation screen. Taking Dimitrija with him, he stepped into the screen. 2 or 3 seconds later. Upon opening his eyes again, he had appeared inside a magnificent royal palace. Below his feet was a deep brown carpet, and the surroundings were filled with various golden utensils. Truly in line with Amanda's taste. My lord. Everyone in the hall bowed in unison. This included heroes from the territory, transmigrators who had accompanied him in battle, and many former kingdom officials Fang Hao had not seen before. Especially those old officials Amanda had recruited anew. While bowing, they also curiously examined the suddenly appeared human. A human lord? Awfully said, Lord, this way please. The most up-to-date novellas are published on Fruitnoelo. As she spoke, she took Fang Hao's hand and walked with him up the jade steps. Above, there were 2 golden chairs placed side by side. Amanda led him to the left one, indicating that he should sit. She then took her place next to him.